Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive presented by PrizePicks. I'm Eric Lindquist, excited to be talking this 9-game slate with you guys, but hopefully you guys enjoyed that intro music because that is the NBA Slate starter intro music, and it just so happens my co-host over here, my other co-host of the NBA Slate starter as well, that is Rayen Patnaik, my buddy at Rayen Patnaik over on the Twitters. You know him at the top of DFS leaderboards. Now you're going to know his analysis. I'm excited to be talking with him. How you doing, my buddy?
Excited to talk about 9 games. Kind of a light day in terms of news, but tons of studs. A lot of exciting fast-paced matchups that we could talk about. But more importantly, we get to do the slate starter in prime time, it seems like.
I was going to say, it's like taking our talents to South Beach or something like that. For those that don't know, I didn't call him my dude because after 7 years of friendship with this guy over here, he decided to one day out of the blue tell me that he hates being called dude. And it's all that I've called him for 7 years of our friendship is, I call everybody my dude. He's like, Eric, I hate it. Please don't call me that. I think that's about how the story goes.
Yeah. Tyler might need to put up a poll for us and says, is dude like a cool word or not? I honestly think it isn't. It just kind of sounds funky, but we'll let chat settle the debate.
Throwing me under the bus before we get to the first game, whatever, you know what? Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That'll make me feel better. That can improve my pride here a little bit, but definitely looking forward to this one. I hope you guys are too, because I've got my buddy on board. And again, we've talked NBA DFS in the shadows for years and years and years. Excited to be talking it in prime time with you here, filling in for Lofty, filling in for Adam. Adam, get well soon. Same thing to Jason Roslin. I'll be on PGA DFS live before lock, back-to-back shows here with my buddy Ben Rasa here tonight. Make sure you're checking that out as well. But let's get to it. We've got a lot to get to in these 57 minutes. So, Rayen, first thing I always ask everybody on every single NBA show, what piece of news are you waiting on that's going to be shaping your lineups the most?
What piece of news am I going to be waiting on? Honestly, I'm not looking forward to anything right away because I embrace the chaos. I want the news to come later in the day. I've been very public about this. I don't think I can be as profitable of an NBA DFS player if there isn't late swaps. So I'm just waiting on the news to come out. And obviously there's little bits and pieces out there that we're waiting on. The De'Aaron Fox situation, Nikola Jokic situation, I believe is also another thing, Aaron Gordon, and who Utah's going to roll out tonight. So the late night hammer is just a bunch of late swapping opportunities for you to take advantage of. So it's going to be another mix and match type of situation, and hopefully the news goes your way. And if the news goes your way, you're going to come up on top, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, that game is going to be massive. And having it in the late window to 10 p.m. Eastern time, we have 3 games starting at that time or later. Of course, the late night hammer officially being Portland and the Lakers. Massive totals, 223, 232.5, 220.5, comparable to the other side. It's just a massive total we're looking at here. But let's get to it. Orlando, Indiana, Orlando 5-point favorites here. The largest total now, it's up to 225.5. So it's gone up a little bit from the 223 we have listed on the board. That is the highest you have of the early window of games. So anything before 10 p.m. Eastern time, that is. Right now, I'm looking at the board and we've got Etuan Moore, he's out, of course. Michael Carter-Williams, Markelle Fultz, all the usual suspects there. Indiana Pacers, O'Shea Brissett, we're waiting on him, questionable. Goga, Sabonis continue to be out there. We're going to be talking Isaiah Jackson, but let's start with the Orlando side of the basketball. Cole Anthony starting to be a guy that's really coming to fruition with everybody back to full strength here. Wendell Carter Jr. is extremely popular, 6,200, played great yesterday. Do you think he plays great again here tonight?
Yeah, this Orlando team against Indiana, everyone just simply eats against Indy. Indy's been a piss poor defense all season long, and shorthanded team as well. And there's a decent amount of ownership going to this team on a 9-game slate. I do have interest in Wendell Carter Jr., $6,200. Comes out a pretty solid overall raw points and value play on the slate. And the ownership's kind of there. Power forward center eligibility is definitely going to be a reason why the ownership's going to be a little bit more for him. I don't mind him. He's probably my favorite Orlando Magic player to go to today. And then followed by Cole Anthony. I think both of those guys seem like solid options, but I wouldn't fault you if you want to pivot to other Magic guys. The Indiana Pacers team is pretty favorable to go up against in terms of fantasy purposes. We might get that Mo Bamba eruption game or Franz Wagner. he was very consistent to start off the season. He's kind of tapered off a little bit with the insertion of Jalen Suggs back in the lineup, but no issues in going to guys like Suggs, Bamba, and Wagner. Those that second tier of owned guys, I have no issues if you want to go above the field on them. It's a spot against Indiana. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, Jalen Suggs, 10%, maybe a little bit high considering, we haven't projected underneath 30 fantasy points here. We're going to have a ton of value to get to later on in the show, in the evening for sure. So if you want to be using those roster spots early, you got to make them count. And I think Cole Anthony, Wendell Carter, rightfully the two guys people are getting to the most, but Jalen Suggs can have some upside for sure. Going to be playing those mid 30s minutes. And it seems as though other guys getting phased out a little bit from that offense as a result. So I'm just fine with that. Is there really anything else to talk about from Orlando?
On the Orlando side of things, no, not really. Just I think they're fine to go to. I know you're going to sacrifice the opportunity and flexibility of keeping lineup spots open for potential better value. But it would not shock me if someone from this game ends up in the quote unquote optimal lineup at the end of the night.
All right. Well, let's get to the Indiana Pacers side. I think the more intriguing for multiple purposes, and I know Isaiah Jackson in the front court, but Karis LeVert, this guy has been frustrating. With Sabonis and Brogdon off the floor this season, you're looking at a 28.6% usage rate. It's something that, I think he's going to have to be handling the ball in a lot of these situations. Assist rate in those same circumstances, you're looking at a 32.3% assist rate. I've been surprised we haven't really gotten that ceiling game, but now it seems as though the ownership, especially on DraftKings, 16.3% we're looking at over there. That's starting to get down there, and he is very intriguing. 7,600 on FanDuel. He's garnering a lot of attention, and I think rightfully so. How much Karis LeVert is too much Karis LeVert tonight?
So we got to look at that price range and what guys fall priced around him. And I think he's a pretty awesome play. I know people have been really annoyed with his play of late, but the shot volume's there. And the upside of putting at 50 against Orlando is definitely on the table. And those definitely check out enough boxes for me to go to today. So I don't have any issues if Karis LeVert falls in your one lineup that you're playing tonight. I like him quite a bit. And anytime I can roster a Michigan guy, I will find a way to get him in there. And in a matchup versus Orlando, I have no issues getting above the field on a guy like Karis LeVert. I expect him to have a bounce back performance. I've been expecting this for some time, where you kind of like need him to win. It just hasn't happened over the past few games, and there's a lot of things that are favoring his way to have an upside game. The matchups there, a couple guys who take up usage on his team are missing, and the price is favorable as well to take advantage of.
All right. Anything else there from that backcourt? Are we looking to try to take any shots at the likes of like a Torrey Craig, who is sub 5%? Again, I don't know how much I want to go nuts with players in the early window, but he's projecting out decently well. He's been disappointing of late in the absence of some of these other characters. We're still waiting on O'Shea Brissett news. I think even he would be intriguing. 3,800 on the FanDuel slate. Might be a guy to kind of get to a little bit as a contrarian piece. Obviously, that's not shooting guard necessarily, but just at least another piece there before we get to Isaiah Jackson.
In the backcourt, no real significant interest. I don't look to Torrey Craig really. He's not a guy in a situation. If a value play like him on tonight's slate, can he give you mid 30s at that price tag? Because you're going to need mid 30s to win down a tournament. And Torrey Craig is a great NBA player, can defend well, hold his own defensively. In terms of fantasy-wise, they're better options, honestly, and we'll get to touch on them later in the slate.
All right, Isaiah Jackson time. The guy's 5,400 on DK. I don't think there's any question that he's going to grade out as one of the best plays on this entire slate. Currently at 26% rostership. I think that would be a little bit low, especially with the fact that Sabonis and Brogdon off the floor this season. You're looking at a 1.22 DraftKings points per minute. Backup centers, whenever you get an opportunity to roster some of these guys, and they basically have all the work in mind there, even a 6K tag over at power forward only on FanDuel, I think 23%, I still want to be over top of that one as well. Are you looking to roster a bunch of Isaiah Jackson like me tonight?
Honestly, I'm actually going to make a stand here, and I'm not looking really forward to going to him on DraftKings or FanDuel, honestly. I think it's a completely fine not to play him if you're playing one lineup, a guy like Isaiah Jackson. I just think he had the super ceiling game at low, much favorable price tag. Definitely a price hike there. he's known to get in a bunch of foul trouble, and he avoided that spectacular, amazing fashion the other night. So Isaiah Jackson is someone I think we have him a negative leverage score right now on our boom bust tool that was just updated about a minute ago, and on both sites on DraftKings and FanDuel. But I think it's a pretty awesome play on Yahoo if you want to take your chances there. But it's just that I think it'll give you a different roster build. The flexibility for late swap is there. And I think he's a good cash game play, but in tournaments, I'm willing to look elsewhere.
I suppose the nice thing is that you're giving up power forward only. There's going to be a lot of power forwards we're looking at in the late night hammer and opportunities to be able to swap onto some of those guys. So maybe just leaving the roster spots open and reacting to what he does in the early games. This is something similar to like what I talked about all week for the wild card weekend and for the other weekend when we had like 4-game slates in NFL, where you get to react to how players do throughout the entire day. You're going to know more than likely by 10 p.m. Eastern time whether or not Isaiah Jackson broke the slate, or if he busts, you can definitely kind of ride with a little bit more of the chalk and just kind of be clear cut in that regard. So I don't hate what you're saying there. I just think it projects out too well for me to have. Are you looking at like being half the field? Or are you completely shorting him even at 5,400 on DK?
I'm obviously news pending, and if there's like not much news that breaks before lock, I'm gonna have to force my hand to land on a little bit of him. But he's coming in with, I believe our ownership has him around the quarter of the field is gonna have him. I think coming in half of that is fine. And I don't have any interest in going above the field on a guy like him today, especially today. If it burns me, so be it. There's another slate to play tonight.
O'Shea Brissett, anything whatsoever, 4,100 on DK as well, 3,800 on FanDuel.
Look, I think we fell in love with O'Shea Brissett last year just because he came out guns blazing, and I think that bias has carried over this year. He's just not that great, honestly. He hasn't been Rick Carlisle doesn't like him, new coaching regime. And I think O'Shea Brissett, if the minutes we have him projected for, I believe, in the mid-20s minutes last time I checked. So his minutes, if he's going to play, are fine. If you're looking for a value play on FanDuel, small forward only, a spot where we tend to spend down a little bit, it's a positive leverage play there. FanDuel's where I'll go to Brissett. Kind of shy away on DK.
All right. One down, 8 to go. Let's keep it rolling. Washington, Philly, now 10-point spread here, 10.5 now in some spots. Philadelphia, 217. That's gone up here, or that's gone down to 210.5. We've literally gotten a lot cut off the top there. That's been bet down quite a bit here where I'm looking at. Odd Chopper, fantastic place to get all of your lines and all of the analysis you need to make proper decisions. So I would check out Odd Chopper while you're at it. Washington Wizards news. We got Thomas Bryant, Bradley Beal, both of them going to be out here for this one. In Philadelphia, we're looking at Korkmaz continuing to be out. We're looking at Shake Milton, obviously out. Joel Embiid is available here once again. And looking at the road, Washington Wizards, we just had Kyle Kuzma go completely nuts last night. His rebounding rate has been absurd here as a member of Washington, nearly 15% here, even along all of these centers, larger front court. But now, Thomas Bryant there. I'm assuming that you're going to get Daniel Gafford in that starting group, and I'm excited to get your take on him at 3,100. But first, Spencer Dinwiddie. This guy let everybody down yesterday. Are you going back to the well today?
Yeah, I'll be going back to Dinwiddie today. Look, there's no Bradley Beal. I know Kuzma had his game, and Dinwiddie's just priced too cheap for this role right now with no Bradley Beal. So I'll still be looking to get above the field. And I like a guy like Dinwiddie and recency bias guys who got burned by him. I think this is kind of where we take advantage of it. The data that we have that kind of suits out as a pretty strong value play on DraftKings, definitely 5,800. Good value play on FanDuel, obviously different roster format, not as good as a raw points play, it seems like. But looking over there on Yahoo, I think he's fine to go to at $23 as well. Yeah, I think Dinwiddie's a pretty outstanding play yet again. I know it's Philly, and I think Dinwiddie can do his thing. I know he burned us, but I want to go right back to him.
All right. Well, I think it does make sense to go back to him as well. Once again, you're losing roster spots early, but looking at guard, I think that I'm okay giving up some of those spots. We might be looking at some front courts. I guess Mike Conley. This could get really fun here later in the evening. I also want you to know that nearly 60% of our audience thought that dude was an acceptable and endearing term to use for another person.
Small sample size. We'll run it back.
Oh my God. We are not running it back. That's the law. 60% is the word. So 60% of you, I really like you. Smash that like button for us because we are the dudes. And dude, Ryan. I apologize. I'm better than that. Kyle Kuzma. I want you to hear your thoughts on this guy who's playing high 30s minutes. You're losing, obviously, Thomas Bryant, probably inserting in Daniel Gafford. I think it's pretty even swap. I'm not too worried about his rebound rate in this spot. I just don't even know what to say. Kyle Kuzma, only $100 more over on DK this time around, still at 10% on DK. I want to play him there. I think even over on FanDuel, Kyle Kuzma at 8,200. He's 1%. I think I'll be a little bit over 1% over there out of 150. What are you planning to do with him today?
Yeah, I think Kyle Kuzma makes a pretty outstanding play yet again. He's just been a monster. And I know it's a 9-game slate. If you fall on both in Dinwiddie and Kuzma, I had a couple lineups that I fell on both. It's fine. I know there's negative correlation there, but we got to look at there's a price to the situation. $7,500 on DK. Coming in power forward only. I like it still. I think the usage is there for him. The shot volume's there. And we've seen the upside time and time again with a guy like Kuz, and that's what we want to target is the upside. I know it's not a great points per dollar play in terms of value, but it's kind of giving the middle finger to that for some time when there's no Bradley Beal around, or even when there is Beal around. So I like going to I like going to Kuzma, but the front court is where things get interesting, where there's no Tom Bryant. We're going to potentially get a minute split of Dan Gafford and Montrezl Harrell, where Dan Gafford comes in at $3,100, I believe, on DraftKings. I will be willing to take some interest. I'll be willing to take some chances of a guy like him at that price tag, just because he opens up the world for you. So $3,100 Daniel Gafford on DK is definitely something you can take your chances on. And over there on FanDuel, I like going to Montrezl Harrell here, 5K. And even on DK, if you fall on Harrell, that's completely fine. One of these guys I feel like can have a good game. It's always tough to pinpoint what's going to happen to the center position. Now that there's one less body, I feel like the minutes seem a lot more safer, where anywhere range from 24 to 26 minutes for these guys can get you the job done. And we've seen Montrezl Harrell do it in short minutes and many times before.
All right. Well, you just jumped the gun. I love that. Front court, definitely fascinating spot there. FanDuel, would you even be looking at rostering Daniel Gafford at 4,400? Like we can't possibly do that on this center slate, can we?
You'd be on FanDuel where you just have one center. It's not as an appealing play. If you're building a handful of lineups and you fall on a couple of him, I have no issues in that. He still grades out to be a fine value option, but everything needs to pan out for him. The FanDuel scoring is more favors him for sure. So not in one lineup, the opportunity cost of missing out on a potential Jokic and an Embiid on the other side of this game. It seems like a lot to swallow and fall on Dan Gafford, but those are the type of decisions that if you make and get it right, you're gonna win. You're gonna win the tournament. So,
getting trolled in chat by a super chat. That's lovely. $9.99. I'd have given $20 if Eric would have brought his binky.
Did you get trolled by a super chat in chat?
I did.
Well, what's new Scooby Doo? I mean, come on, isn't that like a daily thing? You get trolled?
Yeah, pretty much. But here's the thing. If people want to give me $9.99 in order to do it, that's better than free 99, right? Like we can come to that agreement. I don't think there's any question about that.
That's fair.
All right. We're jumping to the Philadelphia side here. Oh, what's happening?
I just saw the super chat, but onto the Philly side we go.
Yeah, it was funny. I enjoyed it. Here we go. Joel Embiid. He makes a lot of sense because he's good at basketball. He's a high upside option. He's coming in at 7% over on the DK slate in our last run there. 16% where he's 10-9 on FanDuel. So a little bit of savings off of Jokic. But, I mean, man, it's hard for me to prioritize him over Jokic. I feel like I say that every single slate. What are you planning to do with Joel Embiid? Joel Embiid, who's had nearly over a 40% usage rate here in his last 10 games.
Yeah, I like Embiid quite a bit. And I have no issues if you prefer Embiid over Jokic today. I think I might to myself. I just think if you end up going to a 12K Embiid, he has the upside of just doing his thing. $12,000 on a 9-game slate is a lot. You really need him to put on a show. And he has been doing that when he's been playing. Obviously, is kind of rested. He hasn't played the last 3 games. Yeah, Joel Embiid is definitely one of my favorite sets on the slate. And I think the field is shying away a little bit. I think maybe they'll prefer Jokic, but on FanDuel, 10-9, Joel Embiid. I like that quite a bit. I think you can do a lot with those extra $500 spending down from Jokic on this type of slate, as there's not been much news to break. So Embiid is a priority play for me for sure.
All right. Well, I like hearing the. I mean, you've been very steadfast in your stance today, even going up against Isaiah Jackson. I mean, I'm impressed. So there's that at least. Seth Curry, 5,300. Kind of weird that he's garnering the most attention out of anybody else on the team. Tobias Harris, I think, can always be a talking point for the FanDuel slate there, just around 2%. Nobody else really garnering any attention here from FanDuel, especially now that we got our boy Tyrese Maxey priced all the way up to 7,400 on FanDuel, and his corresponding tag over on DK is 7,500. I find it hard to get to a whole heck of a lot else here on the Sixers. Do you have any play from any of the major sites?
Guys who have upside to win you stuff on the Sixers, I think Seth Curry on DraftKings where you get 3-point bonus, but everyone else seems priced appropriately / too expensive. Maxey definitely has earned this new price tag, but Tobias Harris, there's some better options around him. Where Embiid coming back in the picture certainly doesn't help these guys when we got to roster them when Embiid wasn't there the other night.
All right, guys, let's keep it moving. We got 37 minutes. We'll keep it flying because I know we've got a couple games we really need to get to and take some time on. We've got NBA rankings free for you today, NHL top stacks, PGA rankings, and if you're a resident of New York right now, sports betting is live in your state. You want to be checking out all the offers we have here at Awesemo. We're posting articles all the time to help you guys out how to take advantage of some of these incredible offers that sportsbooks are giving you. They have things like $200 if any team scores a touchdown, or a free NBA jersey if you bet $100. That's at Caesars. You have a $1,000 risk-free bet with BetMGM. Use OddsShopper. Use it to help you make proper decisions with your betting portfolio, but take advantage of these offers. This is the easiest way to become a profitable sports bettor instantly, is all of these promotions that they're just handing out. So make sure you take advantage of it. Stop guessing, start winning. Join us at Awesemo. But more importantly, take advantage of all of these promotions. I know we've got links and stuff posted all over the place. Alex Baker has them all compiled into one in an article on the site. Check them out, and I promise you'll enjoy. All right, my guy, let's keep it going. We've got Charlotte, Boston. We're looking at a 6-point spread now. That's changed a little bit as well. 224 total. That's stayed just about the same here. And Charlotte, visiting Charlotte team, obviously no Gordon Hayward. Kelly Oubre is going to be back here for this one. He is probable. Jalen McDaniels hasn't been there for a while, but I'm looking at the top end, and nobody is garnering a ton of attention whatsoever on DraftKings. LaMelo Ball, 9,500 now, pretty increased tag. Terry Rozier's gone down a little bit, around 7,300, but my guy today, Miles Bridges, I just don't think he's getting a lot of attention around the industry, and I think he should be on FanDuel at 7,900 specifically. What is your interest level here in the Charlotte Hornets?
I should be having a little bit more interest than I do right now. The total's decently high, 223.5, but there's a ton of other games around that total as well. Miles Bridges is fine. I think I'm a little hesitant to go there. I think FanDuel is a place where you want to go to him. That's the place I play him. I'll prefer that price tag than you do on DraftKings for sure. But the upside is LaMelo Ball. I think if I were to roster a Charlotte player, it would be LaMelo Ball on Charlotte. I like that $8,800 price tag. It seems like I've been buying into this narrative that LaMelo Ball is chasing that all-star reserve selection. So I like chasing narratives, and I think LaMelo Ball at 8,800 is something that I'll be targeting. I prefer that than Miles Bridges. I think small forward Miles Bridges or Karis LeVert. That's kind of like going to be a 1v1 question that people have to decide among. I still prefer Karis LeVert to Miles Bridges. So it's tough for me to go to Miles Bridges. There's no injuries on this team really. And the matchup against Boston is just kind of average. So LaMelo Ball, if I'm going to roster a Charlotte player tonight, he'd be the one.
Terry Rozier, 6,800 on FanDuel. Any interest there? 13.8% he's pulling currently.
6,800 Rozier. It's fine. He's one of those guys who can definitely spike that game from the outside. He's playing against Boston. He's had multiple good games against them in the past. I think Rozier's okay to go to. Nothing like a priority play whatsoever. He's going to play mid to low 30s minutes. Pardon what I said. I believe I said that no one's hurt on this team. Gordon Hayward is still missing from this team, but my apologies there. But I think Rozier's okay to go to 6,800. Nothing too great. I think he's a good value play, and that's all. That's really about it. He's not someone who I think on this type of slate, I'm looking for guys who can kind of get you 50 once they're priced up in the mid six to low sevens range. Rozier has the upside to get you like 45, and that'd be great, but I'd rather shy away.
All right. Well, before we go to the Boston side, we just got O'Shea Brissett ruled out, Ryan. Let's revisit Isaiah Jackson. Are we still saying no, Miss Jackson? He's not for real? Never meant to make you down and cry?
I never said he's not for real. I think he's in terms of that ownership and guys to pivot off of from. Now, this definitely does help Jackson a little bit with no Brissett there. I mean, Isaiah Jackson's I expect him now at least that he should be able to crack the low 30s minutes now, barring out any foul trouble. That concerns me. I think we dodged the Isaiah Jackson foul rate numbers of late. He does foul quite a bit. And if he gets in foul trouble today, he's going to upset a lot of people. It's always tough to predict foul trouble, but it's going against some guys who take a decent amount of usage in the Orlando Magic frontcourt, like Wendell Carter and Bamba at times. So I think this will generate my interest a little bit more, but I also think the ownership will also go up with no Brissett there. And instead of me coming in half of the field, it might go up to like 60% of the field type of situation. We'll see what other news breaks in the next hour leading up to lock.
All right. Well, I did the DraftKings and FanDuel tournament videos for Adam here today. Hopefully you guys can check those out as well. 5 picks. And one of them that I really liked was on the Boston side. It's Jason Tatum. He's 10-6. Really kind of an overpay to be contrarian over there, but 9,800 over on FanDuel makes a lot of sense at 10% to me. I think they can kind of mirror what we've seen in Brooklyn or Chicago, where you have two studs, two guys, or Devin Booker and Chris Paul of late too, where 9,800, 8,400. I don't know if it's Tatum or Jaylen Brown night, but I usually like Tatum a little bit more. I feel like the ceiling's always there, even if Jaylen Brown, puts up 45 and can beat. It's just rare for me to really feel like Jason Tatum isn't going to be outright maybe 60%, 65% of the time. He just outscores Jaylen Brown in these kind of spots. Makes me want to invest in his upside. Can I talk you into some Jason Tatum interest today?
Yeah, I think Jason Tatum always comes in very low owned. And I think the field always thinks he doesn't have the upside, and I strongly disagree. Tatum in this matchup can definitely get you 60 fantasy points. And wouldn't shock me, he's one of those top 5 high-scoring players on the slate. Anytime a player can have that on a 9-game slate, it's something that I always try to target. I know he's not a great value play. He's expensive. There are amazing players who are priced cheaper than him. So Tatum at that price tag is a tournament-only play. And it won't take much to get above the field on a guy like him. So I like going to Tatum. And Jaylen Brown is someone who's it's kind of 1A and 1B there. They combine to shoot 40, 45 times a game. And then he's pretty rock solid as well. To fall on both of them, it seems obviously negative correlated. It's something that if it happens organically, I'll let it be, but it probably won't in terms of the way they're projected at this moment. But Robert Williams is someone – I'm just going to jump to the front court. Robert Williams has played really well against this Charlotte team throughout his career, and he is playing a lot more minutes. Always going to shoot high efficiency shots, and especially on FanDuel where you can rock up those blocks in a hurry. I don't mind getting above that low-owned ownership. It's going to be a very contrarian play, but I do think power forward center only, he can definitely put up a solid performance against the Charlotte team.
All right. Dennis Schroeder's back. Maybe it doesn't really do anything for me. I don't think it takes away from the ceiling of Brown or Tatum, but anything else for you from Boston?
No, nothing really. We haven't seen that Marcus Smart explosion game. That means it's going to happen tonight. So
goody. That'll be fun as I have 0% of him. We've got from EMAC earlier. He member for 10 months. I think he's been around a little bit more than 10 months, EMAC 2024, but he said, Eric, do you refer to, and then it's the dog emoji, as my Duke? That's actually pretty sharp. I like that. Rinpack jealous. Rinpack is not jealous because I got to say, if you guys want to know how good of a dude Rinpack is, why don't you tell them what you ended up getting my little puppy for his welcome home present?
It's kind of weird to toot my own horn. I got him a Duke jersey, like Duke pet jersey. So it should come in the mail within the next 24 hours or something. I
will make sure he can appear on stream again. He won't appear on stream again until I get that jersey. But again, Ryan never brags about himself, how good of a dude he is, how he's okay at DFS, I'd say too. So I do it for him. It seems to work out well. Just like the nicest thing. Makes me emotional even thinking about it. All right, let's get to the next game here, guys. We got Memphis, New York. We're looking at 3.5 for Memphis. Favored here in this one. New York, 217 total. little bit higher there on the other side for the Knicks than we normally see for them. But I think the one piece of news we just kind of be aware of here, Steven Adams is questionable, and we have not heard anything about that. Of course, Dylan Brooks continues to be out here. If there is no Steven Adams, I feel like a guy that I've always clicked on a lot is Jaren Jackson Jr. in these spots. I think a Kyle Anderson might be a little bit viable. Brandon Clark would probably play some backup 5 there at 4,200. What are you planning to do here with this front court in the event that Adams is a no-go?
If there's no Adams, it wouldn't shock me if we see Brandon Clark get back in the starting lineup potentially. That could be a situation that happens. And that's going to be interesting news for the front court. And those minutes will get, I think, chopped up among like Jaren Jackson at the 5, Brandon Clark there. So definitely keep that in mind. That's kind of not great news in the sense like it's not going to change the slate that drastically just because it's not immediate minutes to someone there. They always kind of rotated at their 5-man minutes. So looking at the Memphis team, we saw Desmond Bane just pop off the other night. It's a Knicks team. This game is not going to go as fast. The Knicks were playing a little faster earlier in the year, and they've kind of slowed things down. John Morant continues to smash 10-2, 10-5. He's playing amazing basketball of late. I still think he's a little too expensive just because of other guys there. He's burned me a couple times when I haven't gone to him, but he has the upside to obviously put up 60 points. I just think the matchup is okay. It's nothing great. I just want to go elsewhere with a guy like John Morant. I think there are better plays. We'll touch on Russ Westbrook later in the night, but a guy like him, I think I would rather save the money and go to Russ than go to John Morant in this situation. The Memphis guys are low owned, and I think the field is kind of rightfully so. No one really stands out to me that much. Like Jaren Jackson's 8K. The dude can pick up 3 fouls in the first quarter and end your night real quick. So it's everyone's just priced too expensively in kind of on Memphis side of things. No significant interest on one significant player on the team.
Yeah, I mean, Moran always has a ceiling. Jaren Jackson Jr. could open it up, playing some 5 there in that starting lineup. If you don't have a guy like Brandon Clark there in the starting lineup alongside of him, Jaren Jackson Jr. had some massive ceiling games at the 5 here in the absence of Adams a couple weeks back. So somebody that I've got my eye on, but I think that's all the time we really need. Desmond Bane can go out and make threes. I just will never be able to figure that out. Daniel Gafford officially starting. Good to see that news. I think that doesn't change a whole heck of a lot considering I think we were both projecting him to be doing that. So let's keep it going to the Knicks side of things. We've got RJ Barrett there, garnering some attention over on FanDuel, 6.3%. Highest owned guy from that game as well here. But everybody's super low owned over on DraftKings. Randall, Barrett. We can always take those kind of shots, but are you going to today, Ryan?
Yeah, so this is the Knicks side of things. The one guy I've been kind of trying to chase a little bit has been Julius Randle of late. 9K, 8-3. I just think Randle was going to turn things around at some point. It just hasn't happened. It's probably the Thibodeau effect of these guys just running these guys into the ground. This game's kind of boring in the sense there's no one really that's that outstanding to go to. We've seen Evan Fournier have the random pop-off game at sub 1%, 3-point bonus. That's some guy who I tend to get a little bit above the field just to target that 3-point upside. But Thibodeau has been very inconsistent with these minutes of late. So it makes things really difficult, especially in the backcourt. So that's why the only safe guys on this team are Barrett and Randall. Barrett comes in at $6,500 on FanDuel. I think he's a fine option to go to in terms of value and just raw points. He'd probably be the Nick to go to on FanDuel. Over there in DK, I think Randall is the one that you should target. And not target like aggressively. If you fall a little bit above the field on him, it's not going to take much. And he has the upside to do so. Over there on Yahoo, Randall's only $31. I think he's a pretty solid play over there. I think you can definitely be aggressive with your ownership on Julius Randle on Yahoo.
Anything else from this game for you?
Kemba Walker's $10 on Yahoo if you want to start that Kemba game.
No. Oh, God. Why does he have to be $10? I might have to click on that over on Yahoo. Love playing over there. You should too. Lowest management fees. But I especially love playing on our sponsor PrizePicks, where you have daily prop-based games in multiple sports. You're able to make cross-sport parlays, put things together. You play 2, 3, 4, or 5 player parlays, so to speak, or cards, or whatever you want to call it. You can get up to 10x your entry fee in the 4 or 5 player versions of that. Plus, if you play the 5 player versions, you can win money just getting 4 out of 5. You get like 2 extra entry fee on that. Even 3 out of 5 gets you a little bit of your money back. So you have an opportunity, where you have to go 5 of 5 with a traditional sports book. You can go 3 of 5 and still salvage something. So you definitely want to be checking that out. No doubt about it. Plus, you get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and play over at PrizePicks. That's 1 month completely free to you, a $90 value. Doesn't get any easier or better than that. Super clean, super easy. So many people asking us about PrizePicks all the time. It's a fantastic site, no doubt about it. Check out the App Store, Google Play, or prizepicks.com to go play here. Plus, OddsShopper has phenomenal picks that has it all set up for you. Before you just simply go over there, check out some of the top plays in terms of expected win percentage. You don't even worry about the ROI. That's something you have to be more worried about at a sports book. So look at the top of expected win percentage and find some of the best plays on the day. Ryan, I'm not going to put you on the spot entirely, but I know, just because I do the NBA Slate starter with you every single night, that you've been smashing in the prop game and just quietly in the shadows lingering there. Is there a prize pick that you have your eye on for tonight?
Yeah, so I actually had this pulled up earlier. So we do have a free PrizePicks prop tool that's free for the site. I'll drop it in the YouTube chat for everybody. But this is free, and you guys should definitely take advantage of it. And the best prop that we have to expected win is in the Orlando, Indiana game, the Torrey Craig rebounds. Now, with no Brissett there, this should help Torrey Craig even just get some extra minutes his way as well. The prop line's at 4.5. We have a projection of 6.8 with an expected win percentage of 83%. I'm going to side with the data there, and more times than not, the data is going to be right. So I'll take my chances with Torrey Craig and that over rebound prop line on PrizePicks.
All right. We got 2 super chats from Adam Palmer. Then we're going to fly through a couple games because we've got some interesting stuff we need to talk about later on. Adam Palmer, $4.99 for both of these. Can you get a win fading OKC game entirely in tournaments today? Shout out to Jordan. What up, man? We got Tyler Xander behind the virtual glass today. So there is no producer camp. It is Tyler's season, SZN, how the kids spell it. Doing that. It is definitely Xander's season with a Z emphasis on that. My guy there behind the virtual glass. But Ryan, OKC, I'm guessing he's referring to more of the Dallas side, because I think that they're garnering a little bit more attention with the likes of Brunson, Finney-Smith, and Doncic. But what are you planning to do here with this OKC game? Is there anything specifically that you're just like, oh, you can't pass up on that?
It's Josh Giddey on FanDuel is priced very nicely.
Oh, that's right.
6K on FanDuel. Over there on DraftKings, OKC is okay. Everyone's priced pretty expensive. The team total is gross. It's, I believe, sub 100 points. But Giddey is the guy who I think taking your chances on. Giddey and Dort on FanDuel are fine to go to. If you're looking on the Dallas side of things, we'll touch on this game. But there's guys, I don't know what to do with this Dorian Finney-Smith ownership. Obviously, no Porzingis. That guy always scares me to roster heavily above the field. So I think I will make my choices and go under the field. And I like Dorian Finney-Smith. But Luka Doncic is someone, he's expensive, but you have to pay up for nice things, and he's pretty damn nice on the slate against OKC. So I'll be willing to take my chances on going above the field on a guy like Luka. Raw points wise, pretty great. Point per value, not so much, but raw points can definitely carry a lineup.
And then Adam Palmer said also, Rinpack, you literally have called Fournier on Wednesday nights at the Garden. I'm running him because of you. Nothing like a good you calling Evan Fournier on Wednesdays in the Garden narratives.
Yeah, it's worked out a couple times. I'm not going to even lie. So I definitely ran good there. But it's just a guy who we've seen time and time again. Not time and time again. Random spots will just pop off there. And when he gets hot, Thibodeau does write the hot hand there, which is nice. And 3-point bonus on DK. He can hit 7 or 8 threes and get there. He's played pretty awful for signing for $78 million. The 3-point signings this year, well, Fournier is a much better player than Duncan Robinson overall wise, but Robinson has just lost his touch from the outside, it seems like.
That's problematic. Those undrafted guys. Where did he go to school?
Michigan. But I think he plays much better when Bam Adebayo's in the lineup. They have a 2-man thing going, so expect Robinson to turn things around shortly.
I didn't know you were taking a drink of water there. I didn't have you clicked, or I would have figured that out. But not the first time I've ever screwed up something just transferring it over to you. Not going to be the last. I can promise you that. Let's keep it flying. Cleveland, we've got a 4-point game here. They're 4-point favorites in Houston, so a pretty close spread here for a Houston team that generally you can see some larger spreads than that from time to time, but a big reason for that is Darius Garland is out. You're going to get same kind of guys in the front court, of course, besides Lauri Markkanen that side, but with no Ricky Rubio, Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, they've turned this into Point Chetty. Oh, and wouldn't you know it, Point Chetty is nearly 50% on DraftKings. He is the most the most popular play over on FanDuel as well, 57% over under those numbers, Ryan.
Yeah, it's a Houston matchup. So we did see Chetty start the first half, but they didn't start him in the second half. Brandon Goodwin started the second half over him. So the Chetty ownership, I know the matchup is great. The price tag is great, but he's coming in significantly owned at this price tag. And it's a large enough slate where there are guys priced around him who can definitely outscore him outright. And at this type of ownership, I gotta be willing to come under the field just because I gotta zig when the field is zagging, and vice versa. It just seems like it's a great matchup, and obviously grades out great. But I think a lot of things can fail in this position where there's a guy like Rondo who's there. Rondo could definitely take over the ball handling duty. We haven't seen it as much. He's also priced pretty favorably on DK, especially. And we saw Brandon Goodwin get the start in the second half. So I don't expect the starting lineup to be the same as the last game, what we saw. So keep an eye on that situation.
Yeah, I think trimming Chetty Osman ownership instantly is kind of a pretty solid way to go about your day. I think I'm planning on doing it. So, obviously there's going to be a lot of pieces later on that we're going to get to, and we want to be getting to from that Utah-Denver game specifically. But Chetty, I just don't think he's like the priority that is 50% of my lineups like the field does. No doubt about it. I think he's going to be serviceable either way. I think he's still going to play some, high 20s minutes at least against Houston in a reserve role regardless. But I just don't know if I want to be prioritizing in the same way. So I think I'm on board with you there. Brandon Goodwin, Rajon Rondo, you brought them up. I think they're fine unless you see them in the starting lineup, in which case you can definitely fire away in those spots. But looking at the front court, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, I really don't know how much to be getting to of them in this spot, but both grading out pretty well, sub 15% over on DraftKings. Feel like they've always been more popular plays over on FanDuel. Evan Mobley, gigantically owned at 31% over there. Jared Allen, 19%. What are you planning to do with those two guys specifically?
Yeah, I like them quite a bit. I'm willing to, to get off my Chetty ownership. I would rather be above the field on guys like Allen and Mobley than going above the field on a guy like Chetty Osman. Allen and Mobley in this matchup could both have 50-point upside. Not to say they can hit it on the same night, but one of them certainly can. They're priced kind of favorably across the board. I like everything that's going for them. Evan Mobley's playing the team that passed up on him on the draft. And he's been a stud all season long, unlike Jalen Green. So I like Evan Mobley a lot on FanDuel. No issues getting above on that ownership. He's kind of the reason why I'm not as heavily invested in Isaiah Jackson over there, just because I think I'm willing to spend those extra $900 for Evan Mobley. You can certainly roster them both, but I'm just trying to find ways to get a little different off the field today.
All right. Anything else here from Cleveland? We could talk Isaac Okoro. Somebody brought up in chat a different slate in a different universe for me.
Okoro's, Okoro is like a Chetty Osman pivot type of situation. It's as crazy as that sounds, but I don't mind sprinkling in some Rondo. And if Brandon Goodwin starts, he's a 3K play. If you're looking for a 3K guy in your lineup, it can certainly be worse than Brandon Goodwin. It's a good matchup against Houston. So over there on FanDuel, where Goodwin's the min at 3,500. So keep an eye on that situation, what that starting lineup is for Cleveland. It could open up some interesting value that might not be as heavily owned as once going into the slate.
All right. Houston's full strength here on the other side of this game. Kevin Porter Jr. returned. He's currently not flipping tables and throwing temper tantrums. So 6,200 on FanDuel. Maybe you can click on that a little bit. Jalen Green, I don't even want to talk about. I don't even know if that was like a subtle jab because I thought he would actually be good once upon a time. He is confirmed not good, but somebody I do have interest, probably the only guy from Houston outside of Christian Wood who you can always take shots on his upside would be Eric Gordon, who's now down to 4,400. He's been playing mid-30s minutes in competitive games. The spread's supposed to be close here in this one, and obviously I think that's baked into the projection a little bit, but he grades out decently well here at Awesemo as well. I think that at 4,400, he's a little bit cheaper than Chetty over there. And, I'm specifically looking there, 4,500 over on FanDuel. He's even lower owned at 3%. Can I talk you onto any shares of Eric Gordon today?
Yeah, Eric Gordon. I'm not certainly. I'm not that interested in Eric Gordon. I think it's a pretty solid value play. A lot of things have to go right for him. He's very scoring dependent, right? He has to just light it up from like bucket wise. Doesn't really fill up any other stats on a consistent basis. So I'd be willing to shy away from Eric Gordon. The guy who I am interested in is Kevin Porter Jr. This is his first game against Cleveland since Cleveland gave up on him. And just trying to buy in and psychoanalyzing Kevin Porter Jr. The guy does definitely play with some sort of chip on his shoulder at different types of games. So Kevin Porter Jr. is someone who I'd be willing to get above the field on today, definitely. And a guy like Jayshawn Tate, he does have 70-point fantasy upside. We've seen it happen once this season. I don't mind sprinkling going to Jayshawn Tate. I prefer Porter and Tate over Gordon if you're looking for Houston value tonight.
All right, heading to OKC and Dallas. And by the way, Daniel Berger withdrew today. I heard he was a dinged up human being. And so it's interesting that's going to make the PGA show very, very intriguing to check out tonight. Ben Ross and myself, 8 p.m. Eastern time. See you guys there. Excited to be talking a little AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. But OKC and Dallas, massive spread here, 12-point spread. Even Dallas without Porzingis doesn't really matter. They are expected to destroy OKC because they're bad at playing basketball. Low 206 total here. But starting with the OKC side, this team was very intriguing once upon a time. On DraftKings, I think they are no longer intriguing whatsoever. But let's just kind of jump to the chase. Josh Giddey and Luka Dort over on FanDuel. What are you planning to do with those guys, considering they are pretty popular on that site?
Yeah, Giddey, rightfully so, and he's only shooting guard only. If you had multi-position eligibility, he'd be even higher owned than the projected ownership we have right now. Josh Giddey just grades out to be a really solid play. Dallas has been pretty solid defensively all season long, but the price tag for Giddey and his way to contribute across the board is pretty impressive when Shea's not on the floor. I like going to Giddey a decent amount on FanDuel. Priced kind of expensive on DraftKings on the other side, 7,900. But Lu Dort on FanDuel, another guy, just small forward and shooting guard eligibility. Don't mind him. Those two guys are kind of the show there, as gross as that sounds. But Josh Giddey, definitely, I like going on FanDuel a decent amount. Over there in DraftKings, tough to really advocate for anyone in sort of significant fashion. Can one of the backcourt guys get there? We saw minutes go to Trey Mann, Aaron Wiggins, Ty Jerome. It's kind of a roulette situation in that backcourt with no shade with the shade position. So I just want to take my chance in the conference route and guys like Josh Giddey and Lu Dort on FanDuel. DK, not so much.
All right, Luka Doncic doesn't really see a huge spike, 1.54 DraftKings points per minute with no Kristaps Porzingis off the floor this season. But you know who does take spikes? Guys like Jalen Brunson, nearly a fantasy point per minute guy. You have Marquise Chris, 1.2, and he's garnering some attention over on DK, where he's the flat min at 3K. And we talked about him a little bit last night, and you kind of laughed about it. And I'm curious to see if you've changed your tune at all with some of the value that we have coming up later here in the evening, or if a 3K Marquise Chris is somebody you want to get to at all. But talk to me a little bit about Dallas starting with Luka Doncic.
Yeah, looking over that in DraftKings, 11.6 Luka is expensive, but the capability of him winning his slate is on the table for you. No, I don't think it's necessary to be with the field. If you come in a tad bit under, no issues there. It's a lot of things can go pretty rough for Luka. Let's say if Dallas waxes and claps OKC, which certainly can happen, we can definitely only get 2 quarters or 2.5 quarters of Luka, which won't be enough to pay off an 11.6 price tag. So he's fine, but keep in mind, OKC could definitely get clapped real easily in this matchup. Now, Jalen Brunson is a great pivot off of Josh Giddey on FanDuel. No issues if you want to roster them both. But the guy who's getting a lot of ownership on this team is Dorian Finney-Smith. And it's a tough. He's like guys like Chetty Osman and Dorian Finney-Smith really make things difficult for me because I hate rostering those guys at all in just general slates. And when they're popular, I just tend to shy away. And if that's the type of night where they end up burning me, I will have to swallow that pill and try to move on. I just don't like going to these type of players when they're popular. But a guy like Marquise Chris, yeah, I'd be willing to get above the field like Marquise Chris at 3K on DK. By a decent amount. I don't mind getting above the field at that ownership right now. Power forward center eligibility opens up a lot for you where you jam into multiple studs. I think we can definitely go to Marquise Chris on DraftKings. FanDuel 5K, not so much.
All right. Jalen Brunson like that on FanDuel a lot. You talked about that. Luka Doncic. Dorian Finney-Smith, you're just going to completely write him off, or does he have any kind of interest that you're going?
No, not complete write-off. I don't think it's necessary to come. I think with the field is fine. On a site like FanDuel where he has shooting guard and small forward eligibility, I just think he needs to. He's obviously can get you the 3-point bonus here and there on DraftKings and get you. I kind of are hoping for that Dorian Finney-Smith double, and certainly can happen. The minutes are great. The matchup is there. It's just a guy that's burned me over and over again. And on this type of slate, there are so many other guys in that price range that we can definitely outperform him at much less ownership.
All right. Well, I've been saving this. So the $1.99 super chat that we had there a second ago, best single entry stack on the slate from Hunter V. Hoos. I don't think there's any question in my mind. My favorite game would be going to this one that we are about to talk about right now. It's probably the one we'll spend the most time with. We'll fly through the last two, and then we'll hand it over to our friends, Greg and Terry, doing NBA Live Before Lock. Don't go anywhere. They're going to be with you an hour and a half, then doing that half hour talking a little prize picks. So looking forward to that show. You should be too. Denver, Utah, 220.5 total, 3-point for Utah now. So that's changed a little bit. It's gone down a little bit. And part of the reason why, Nikola Jokic, now questionable. We talked about it a little bit last night. And the number one tournament play that I had on my video, and this is before the Nikola Jokic news, before the DeMarcus Cousins news, before the Aaron Gordon news, was Will Barton. Because on a back-to-back where they just got annihilated by Minnesota, going into Utah, surprising to me to see Utah was a favorite when they opened, but Hassan Whiteside got ruled out on the other side of this game earlier. And if Nikola Jokic plays, I don't think that there's any question that he's going to be the guy that you project for the most raw fantasy points on this game. But leaving a guy with 12-6 on DraftKings or 11-5 on FanDuel, there's not many places to turn that salary into something here, unless you just have a bunch of roster spots, which is kind of what I'm planning to do, but still might end up with some dead salary there. How are you planning to attack this strange situation we have with Denver?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the late night hammer with a lot of late news. And I think it's fine going to Nikola Jokic tonight. I think there's a lot of other centers that you can go to. There's an Anthony Davis there. There is, if you have Jokic in the utility spot, that's one way to keep your position. You can just leave money on the table and go to James Harden. There's a lot of guys you can pivot off of from Jokic. If you play your lineup builds correctly, it's going to be tough on FanDuel by a little bit just to fill out all that salary. But I think the opportunity cost of missing out on Jokic is so high nowadays, even at these elevated price tags. It's just like you kind of want him to play. I think he might come in a little bit low owned just because of the Q tag. And Jokic can be the highest scoring player on the slate by 20 plus points. So I think I'll be approaching the slate with him playing. And then there's so many guys that I can pivot off of from and get in other guys and just kind of build my lineups from the late night games onward. So yeah, I don't have no issues playing Jokic right now, the way the news comes out.
And if Jokic is out, we can play legitimately everyone, correct?
Yes, we can play anyone on this team. I don't know what the DeMarcus Cousins situation is. I think there could be a chance Jokic sits and Cousins plays, and that's a party for us. And if you get DeMarcus Cousins in this type of role, it's going to be a ton of fun to go to Boogie Cousins against a depleted Utah team. So this is the game that everything just we got to wait on, and it's going to dictate the whole slate for us.
Yeah, it's going to dictate literally everything we do. But I was saying Will Barton is the guy that was my number one tournament play just before all of that news broke, because I thought there was the news could break. And then sure enough, they're all questionable. He would continue to be the priority for me. Monty Morris is 5K over on DraftKings. He is 5,300, actually has a higher assist rate in the absence of Jokic than Will Barton. So he becomes a priority for me as well. You could play Bones Highland. You could play Austin Rivers. You could play Jeff Green. You could play J. Michael Green. You could play Zeke Naji. It goes on and on and on. If you have no Cousins, no Gordon, no Jokic, the entire team becomes viable. And, I'm going to have roster spots because on the other side of this game, and again, I wanted to get to this game before we talked a little bit of Brooklyn and Sacramento. It just made more sense. Wanted to see how much time we had left. But Utah, no Hassan Whiteside, Jordan Clarkson questionable, also opens up the entire board here. It looks like Eric Pascal is actually pulling some ownership already at 15.2%. He's kind of the assumed starter there. I think Azubuike would actually have a chance to start if Jokic is actually good to go there. I can't imagine Eric Pascal trying to guard Nikola Jokic. It's one of the funnier things I've ever imagined. But what are you planning to do with Utah, Ryan?
It's they're depleted. I think I'm just gonna play it safe and just take my chances on being above the field on a guy like Bogdanovich. With Clarkson, if he plays, he's pretty outstanding at these price tags. I think just running it safe a little bit. We might even see Rudy Gay play at the 5. They did this in the last matchup against Denver. They went small, where Gay and Royce O'Neal just were switching off minutes at the 5 spot. Azubuike did start that game. Played only 16 minutes, and I don't think we can go to Azubuike in any confidence just because of the opportunity of us seeing Eric Pascal there, and Rudy Gay play the 5. So I think sprinkling in guys like Pascal, Rudy Gay, Bogdanovich, and Conley, where just being with the field is completely fine. Going above the field on a guy like Rudy Gay for me is something that I think I'm okay doing at their price tags, 4,500 and 4,300. And one of them can definitely have a great game. Bogdanovich has played exceptionally well against Denver this season in both matchups. So, and not to say that can definitely happen again. I think he's priced pretty favorably, especially on FanDuel, only $5,200.
5,200. Yeah, I mean, that's just fantastic. But yeah, Bogdanovich, Conley. I don't see anybody that I wouldn't like in the absence of Jordan Clarkson here as well. I think it just becomes another team that we want to get to in bulk. Utah, Denver. Can you list out let's say Jokic is out. Who would your favorite 3 Denver plays be? And let's say Clarkson's out. Who are your 3 favorite Utah Jazz players?
If Jokic is out, the thing is, there's so many different permutations and combinations for these guys who are questionable. So I don't want people to hold on to that situation. But let's say if Jokic is out and Boogie's in, Boogie's starting. Boogie's by far like the best play on the slate, I think, at that point. Aaron Gordon, if Aaron Gordon is also out and Nikola Jokic is out, that's going to elevate guys to take your chances on a Jeff Green and JaMychal Green. And then another situation is where we get all 3 Cousins, Jokic, and Aaron Gordon out. Jeff Green, JaMychal Green, and Zeke Naji come into play, where they become excellent value plays. So you can mix and match these permutations and combinations and land on great value. But it's tough to just pinpoint the top 3. But on the other side of things in Utah, it's a little bit more easier. If Clarkson is out, I'll go Bogdanovich, Conley, and Rudy Gay. Maybe actually I'll go Bogdanovich, Gay, Conley in that order. In terms
Sean Ross. Oh, sorry. I was going to just jump quick because we've got 2 minutes and we're going to go a little bit over here today. We've got 2 games to go. Don't think the guys on the next show will be too upset about such things. But 499, we're looking at from Sean Raza. Is stacking Russ and 80 better for FanDuel GPP or Russ and Nurkic? We'll talk about that game when we get to it here. That'll be the last one we cover. But let's jump to Brooklyn, Sacramento. Massive 232.5 total we're looking at there. A 4-point spread in favor of Brooklyn. Of course, James Harden looking like one of the more popular plays. He is the spend up at guard that most people are going towards here. 10-5 over on FanDuel, where he's shooting guard at small forward. Point guard only at 11-2 on DK. I don't really know what to say considering no Kevin Durant. He makes a phenomenal play. How much do you plan to get to James Harden tonight?
Yeah, 10-5 James Harden, FanDuel, fantastic play. 11-2, don't mind him either. I had some really good lineups with James Harden last night, where I think I ended up with me having the best Harden lineups, and he just kind of tailed off towards the end as Phoenix played an exceptional third quarter and fourth quarter where Harden just couldn't get going, unfortunately. But Harden, Sacramento, even better matchup. Doesn't get really much better than this. He can definitely light it up and take you to the promised land. So I like getting above the field on guys like Harden and Kyrie, because Kyrie is just amazing. These 2 guys make a lot of sense to go to. It's tough for me to go to any other guys in the backcourt. Patty Mills, no interest going to him. We saw Claxton get the start. I had a decent amount of him yesterday. And I saw Blake Griffin play pretty well in those minutes that he got. So it seems kind of a split there. Also, James Johnson's getting there. I don't mind sprinkling in some Blake Griffin. Kind of a nice slate only play. But at that price tag, Griffin showed last night the ability to get there. Sacramento matchup where I think he can definitely pan out as well. I don't mind swinging in some Claxton and Griffin just because of how good the matchup is. Wouldn't want to fall on both. On the night slate, it's okay. But on the main slate, not so much.
Yeah, I did not like Claxton against Phoenix yesterday. I'm going to get to a little bit, I think, on FanDuel where he's power forward eligible. I think it makes sense to get to a little bit there in this matchup. Completely different situation that we have than last night against Phoenix. And that's because Sacramento, they're up in pace and they're terrible at defense. That's pluses. Let's talk about them. Tyrese Halliburton 19.1% currently on FanDuel. That's higher than the 14% I saw on him earlier here. We're still waiting on De'Aaron Fox news. The timing of that news is going to matter massively. Of course, Terrence Davis continues to be out there at guard, so it'd be a lot of Halliburton. Davion Mitchell is a guy people have been rostering here to success over on FanDuel for sure, where you can get a little bit of the upside from his defensive prowess. But Marvin Bagley is out as well from the front court. A couple things really to discuss here. Let's start with Halliburton. How much of him are you getting to tonight, Ryan?
It's going to come down to the Fox news. If Fox is in, I'll get to a little bit, but right now it's too expensive for the situation if Fox is in. But if Fox is out, I'll get to a little bit of him. 7,600 over there on FanDuel. Good's out a decent value play, but he's priced with Karis LeVert, priced around CJ McCollum, who we'll touch on. I just prefer those two guys more than Halliburton in the situation. It's a decent matchup against Brooklyn. I just think he's been playing amazing, obviously. It's tough for me to go there in some sort of confidence, especially if De'Aaron Fox plays. He just kind of ruins the fun in Halliburton over there.
You know who doesn't have the fun ruin is Richaun Holmes, who I think, because of blowouts, because of foul trouble the last two games, I think people are really sleeping on him, especially, 13.6%. They're there at a 5K number over on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, where he has power forward eligibility, 5,700, might look a little wonky, but I don't care. I'm going to play him because I think, we have him projected at 28 minutes. I think that's the perfect projection, but I think 32 is in play in the absence of Marvin Bagley. You get Metu back in there and, he played 25 minutes in a reserve role, last time out, 18, 25. Maybe he does get up there a little bit more to 26, 27, but I don't really expect that. How do you feel about Richaun Holmes in this front court?
I think it's an excellent night slate play, and I have no issues if you want to get above the field on a guy like him. He's a pivot off of Isaiah Jackson ownership. And Holmes, after Alvin Gentry has come in, he's kind of jumped around with these minutes with Chimezie Metu sometimes playing a little bit at the four. We've seen Alex Leonard enter the rotation. Bagley being out is why I think going to Holmes makes a lot of sense tonight. So I have no issues if you want to go above the field on a guy like Richaun Holmes, and I think I'll be there with you.
Guys, smash that like button. Rinpack giving you guys all the phenomenal analysis here. The NBA Slate starter went viral here. We went public. We've done our initial public offering over here. Check it out. NBA Slate starter every single night. Ryan and I, Sunday through Thursday night, get together in Zoom and we talk NBA immediately when the slates come out. Please check that out. 5-star reviews over on Spotify, over on Apple. Go a long way for us. Thank you so much for those of you guys. We have so many great loyal listeners and we really appreciate you. Ryan, let's take it home. Portland, Lakers. We're looking at a 223 total 4-point spread here in favor of the Lakers, starting with the road Portland side. Seems like everybody's getting pretty flat ownership at the top. The normal guys. We've got Norman Powell there. We've got a probable Anthony Simons. We've got a probable Yusuf Nurkic here. I'm going to have swaps if anything crazy happens here for sure. But CJ McCollum is a guy I know you've been getting overweight to as well. I think we do have a massive upside game coming here. Which one of these guys out of this grouping are your favorites to get to in tournaments?
Man, this is an exciting game for me to target on, especially the Portland side of things. I've been chasing CJ McCollum a decent amount, and I'll be doing it yet again, even though the price tag has gone up in the process, 8,100 and 7,700. Very favorable $30 price tag for CJ McCollum. But I like going to him quite a bit in significant fashion tonight. I like CJ quite a bit. Then my favorite blazer would be Norm Powell, then Nurkic. But I have no issues going to all three of them in the late slate. But in the main slate, if you want a couple of these guys in your lineup, no issues. That's how I think great the matchup is. Anthony Davis being back does hurt the interior D at times, but Davis has kind of been lazy on defense of late. And I do expect him to turn it up a little bit, but the effort in there hasn't been there for some time. AD playing defense. So expect AD to carry the load offensively, but defensively, not as much. So I like a lot of these Portland guys, and their ownership is a little lower than I expected. So these are type of things where I got to sometimes look back and see what I'm missing out on. It kind of makes sense. A lot of other guys are just projecting a little bit better, but there's no reason why McCollum can't drop 45, 50 fantasy points in this type of matchup.
Nurkic, any issues? For me, it just kind of makes it seem like over on FanDuel, because of those major ceilings, I'm probably not going to get to as much, but that's where he's projecting out the best at 14%. Do you have any Nurkic interest even for FanDuel?
Yeah, I had no issues coming in just a little bit under the field at that type of ownership. There are guys like Jared Allen, Robert Williams, all priced around him, and they all have similar upside. So that's why the ownership is coming in the way it is, because a lot of those guys have all the similar, I think, a boom percentage last time I checked. So I don't mind following on Nurkic, and I think Nurkic is a great late night hammer.
All right. And Lakers to round it all out. Looks like a lot of Westbrook and Anthony Davis in the absence of LeBron James, who is doubtful here in this spot. And then it seems like Stanley Johnson is a guy garnering a little bit of attention on FanDuel, 3,800. I don't really want to do that. I don't think you do either. But over on DK, Malik Monk, the most popular Laker, 22.3% here. Let's start with the studs, Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook. You're a notorious AD stan. Are we standing with Anthony Davis tonight?
Yeah, for sure. I think going to Anthony Davis makes a lot of sense today. It's burned me over the past few months, but I think I'll be willing to take my chances, especially on FanDuel. Power forward center eligibility gives me a decent amount of flexibility. Center only on DK, not as much interest, but it still will be going to him at that price tag, $41 on FanDuel. Yeah. We saw Anthony Davis in the Philly matchup show why he can be one of the best top 3 players in the league when healthy, when the ball goes through him. It's going to be on Westbrook to make sure that happens. So Westbrook comes in at $8,500 on FanDuel, like that a decent amount. Don't mind the $9,400 price tag on DraftKings. It's a Portland matchup. Everyone eats against Portland. I like going to Russ and AD. I have no issues if you fall on them both whatsoever. I think both can get you 50 plus fantasy points in this matchup.
All right, 9-game slate. We flew for you. Rinpack, the man. Go follow him at Rinpack over on Twitter. Go follow me while you're at it too, at Eric Lindquist. Appreciate you. Thank you so much to Tyler Zander here. That is all that we got here. It's time for the NBA Live Before Lock show. But Ryan, any final words for the people?
Yeah, late swap. And thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you so much, guys. Smash that like button. Appreciate you guys so much. It's Greg. It's Terry. You guys know them. You guys love them. Check it out. We're out of here. Best of luck tonight.
And here we are at last, finally here. I'm so confused. The show's about to start. I think the show's about to start. I'm sitting in Zoom waiting for my show to come on. I go, am I in the wrong room? Has something changed on the schedule? I'm not aware of them. I'm not supposed to be on the show today, but it's just, Eric going 10 minutes over his time slot while I'm sitting here like a good boy showing up to work on time, trying to get my work in, but whatever, it happens. Eric and Ryan went a little bit overtime, and I understand they did miss on some super chats. So Tyler is going to send those to me at some point. Here, actually, Ryan sent it. Ryan sent one to me. I thought we were waiting to start so you get some of the super chats, but whatever, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks. So after Terry and I are done talking through all the slate up until locker room, stick around for another 30 minutes, breaking down all the injury situations, everything else that's going on. So you guys will want to stick around for the next 30 minutes because we have some key players on the injury report tonight, most notably Nikola Jokic. That's going to be a massive talking point for today's slate. And I think that is a good place for us to start, Terry, because I have Jokic project for the most fantasy points on the slate. Generally, I do whenever he's out there. But how are you going to be handling the situation with his status pretty uncertain?
Right now, he is aggressively in my lineups, I would say. He's my highest. He's right behind James Harden as my highest owned pay up guy, like my 6th or 7th overall highest owned guy in this 2000 lineup crunch that I just pushed through a sim. He's a big part of what's going on in these lineups right now. I'm obviously doing that with the hopes that he's playing, obviously doing that with the hopes that we get him a little bit under owned in the event that he is playing. Definitely a spot that I'm more nervous about it than I was last night. I thought a lot more confident yesterday that he was going to play today. I could definitely see him sitting this one out. Also getting to a ton of Jordan Clarkson, which is just making me totally uncomfortable on the other side of that game. So should be a fun situation to watch as we go through lock.
Yeah, and by the way, we did just get a quick piece of injury news, which is Seth Curry ruled out. That was something that was fairly unexpected, not something that we were anticipating happening. And when you consider the state of the Philadelphia 76ers backcourt now, as is, it's a spot they're really thin at on the roster. Now there's no Seth Curry, there's no Furkan Korkmaz, there's no Shake Milton. Part of the issue is when this roster was initially constructed, also, obviously, they were leaning on Ben Simmons to play a lot of those minutes. There's just not a lot of guys here now. So here are the available backcourt players for the Philadelphia 76ers today. We have Tyrese Maxey, Danny Green, Isaiah Joe, Charlie Brown. It's not really a lot to see here. So just kind of quick reaction from you, Terry. What do you make of this news with Seth Curry being out for the 76ers?
I mean, with names like Isaiah Joe and Charlie Brown on the list, if I didn't know better, I would think you were just screwing with me with 2 of those names. But yeah, that's a spot. I mean, I think on top of my head, the immediate name that leapt to mind was Tyrese Maxey. Would just create a smash spot even more so. He was a guy I was kind of getting to already throughout today, but I think that's really going to create a nice situation for him. So we'll see where he goes. I don't think any of that's caught in our most recent update, which kind of caught me in the middle of here. But that would be the name that immediately leaps to mind. And then let's just kind of see what happens with some of those other names. But he's the guy I'd be interested in out of that group for sure.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to just talk about when it comes to somebody like Tyrese Maxey, I understand his price is pretty inflated today over on FanDuel, on DK. Let's see, where do we have Maxey price now? Maxey is 7,500 on DK. That could be a bit of a tough price point for me to get to. Over on FanDuel, we've got Tyrese Maxey at 7,400. Let's see. How many minutes do you think he plays now? I mean, Tyrese Maxey, we've seen some of these situations where these guys have been out and they've played Maxey as much as 43 minutes in regulation. It's tough to project him for 43 minutes. I don't think it's unreasonable to give him 40. I understand and actually giving him 40 minutes, I would come fairly close to projecting for 40 fantasy points, maybe 74, 7,500. He's more in play than I thought when I first looked at the salary.
Yeah, and it looks like right now we've got him at the site at 37.4, and I feel like that's a little bit low, just given what we know about the state of this backcourt right now. I could easily see him cruise over 40. We've seen him do that, like you said. He's averaged 40.7 over the last 3 games just as is. He played 42 the last time out. He put up a 60-point night on FanDuel. There's really not a lot not to like. Even with that bumped up price tag at 7,400, I think I'm still there on the FanDuel slate. Point guard and shooting guard eligibility also gives him a little bit of additional upside on FanDuel he doesn't necessarily have at a higher price against a lower cap on DK. He's point guard only over there. So like him a little bit better on the FanDuel slate, and I feel like the field will be behind on the play.
Yeah, and then we'll hit on some of those super chats in a second, but this was obviously unexpected news. Any of the value plays stand out to you? Because I'm kind of looking at this Philadelphia 76ers rotation. I think Embiid is going to play big minutes. We'll talk more about him also, because I think Embiid now becomes an even stronger pay-up option. Tobias Harris is going to play big minutes. Maxi's going to play big minutes. I don't know that there's anybody else here that really stands out as a value play. Maybe George Niang if he enters the starting lineup. But I think we're going to see maybe like 30-ish minutes out of Matisse Thybulle, who's not the best fantasy producer in the world, generally scores better for the FanDuel scoring than DK scoring just because of his defensive stats. But it's hard for me to get behind, like Danny Green, Charlie Brown, Isaiah Joe, or any of those guys.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough. And when you look at the per minute numbers on a lot of these guys, the nice situations are when we run into these guys that are priced 3,500 to 4,500, and they're still, 0.85, 0.951 fantasy point per minute guys or thereabouts, or even the amazing situations when we get like a 1.25 guy and he's dead min price. With guys like this team, I'm just looking down the list. George Niang, 0.69. Isaiah Joe, 0.57. Danny Green, 0.72. Matisse Thybulle, 0.71. Not the greatest overall producers in the world. Andre Drummond fits into that last category at 5,500. He's a 1.31 if you wanted to go that route, but we don't have the minutes for him. What I'm seeing, though, on the board, I do expect we'll gain in optimal rate, we'll gain in boom probability for both Isaiah Joe and George Niang, just based on, I've got it caught in between right now where I don't have the boom and the optimal update, but I do have the minutes update. So we've got Isaiah Joe now 24.6 minutes and Niang at 23.5, both min priced on FanDuel at 3,500, 3,400 and 3,000. Niang, Joe respectively on DK, power forward, shooting guard, some different positioning, some very, very cheap prices. With those minutes, I expect that'll tick up a little bit.
Yeah. And then, something else about, here's kind of a funny story about George Niang. Earlier in the year, it was a game. There was a bunch of guys out for the Philadelphia 76ers. Niang ends up being a really good player off the bench for Philly in one of those games. And Joel Embiid was asked by reporters, what do you think of George Niang and the contributions he got from him? And I'm paraphrasing, but he said, to be honest, we signed this guy in the offseason. I thought he sucked, but now he's played some games for us. And I think he's pretty good. I'm happy we have him on the team. Long story short, I think there's a chance Niang could start and play extended minutes. If he ends up in the starting lineup, I think he's worth getting some exposure to in tournaments. Yeah. No interest in him if he comes off the bench.
Yeah, and it's just a price-driven play at that point. I just mentioned the per minute marks that they get, so you need the minutes for either him or Isaiah Joe to pay off. Either one of them lands in the starting lineup. I think you definitely jump on it at min price on FanDuel and thereabouts on DK. So yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, and now also looking through, it's hard to not expect a mass amount of usage for Joel Embiid for a couple of reasons. Number one, just crazy high usage every slate for Joel Embiid. He's something like a 42% usage rate now over the last month. Recent games for Embiid, this is just insane. 42% usage rate, 39, 48, 48, 42, 56, 43. Now we're taking Seth Curry out of the mix, who's one of the only shot creators in the backcourt for the Philadelphia 76ers. How does Joel Embiid stack up compared to Nikola Jokic for you right now?
So I was getting to more Jokic, like I said at the top of the show, but it wasn't a massive difference in how I was seeing the two plays. And with Jokic coming in a little bit more expensive, I believe on the FanDuel slate, I'm just trying to put them side by side right here. Yeah, Jokic a little bit more expensive, 11.4 versus 10.9 on FanDuel, 12.6 versus 12,000 on DK. I think with the minimal uptick that we can potentially expect in usage, the minimal, just a little bit more of opportunity there, it might shift. If it doesn't change my, my complete ownership, it would definitely shift a fair amount of shares from one to the other. It would probably level them off, if anything else. And I was heavy on Nikola Jokic, so I think it definitely changes the outlook for Joel Embiid enough. Like it's taking him probably we had him at an 18% optimal rate on FanDuel with Jokic at a 22. I would imagine that's going to come in fairly level now between the two of them, both center only plays over on that site. And similar story on DK. You get a little bit more room on Jokic over there. He was 17.3 versus 10.3 for Embiid, but I think that's going to close. That gap is going to close, and Embiid becomes more interesting just by virtue of being, the big target out there.
All right. Now getting back to those super chats from the previous show that they didn't get to, the one we have here, Bill W. He asked for a single entry at the center position, pay down with Pell, Chris Gafford, or pay up. So here's the deal with those guys you mentioned. I like getting to Marquise Chris today. I also like getting to Daniel Gafford to a lesser extent. But you can play Marquise Chris at power forward as well on DK, and that's kind of where I'm getting more exposure to him. My preference is still to pay up at the center position. Right now, I just reran my lineups with the 76ers news, and I have about 40% Jokic exposure, 30% Joel Embiid. So my priority is still to pay up at the center position, but how are you approaching it today?
Yeah, I actually wrote about that situation in my Optimal Lineups article this afternoon, so you can hop over to the site and check that out. It's free on the site every day and get a little bit deeper into it. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. That's a situation I wanted to be a part of, particularly with Marquise Chris coming in at that dead minimum price and then Gafford landing next to him at 3-1. I thought those two guys were interesting just as a foundational piece of just plug and play value plays that you can put in. You can go util power forward and then still spend up at center. So I don't have any issue getting to all three of those guys in a DraftKings lineup, to be quite honest. And it still allows you to pay up to like a Harden at in the guard spot. So I really like them as a base of construction. That said, there are plenty of cheap options at basically every position today, and how the slate's broken down, whether it's going to Indy at the wing positions with Torrey Craig, Jeremy Lamb, at the forward spot with Isaiah Jackson for a little bit more money. Chetty Osman will, I'm sure, talk about at some point in this show. So there's a lot of different spots, but as a foundational piece, if you're looking to power forward center for guys who are projected for minimum minutes, they can deliver big time points per minute. Those are guys that are examples of what I was talking about before that we saw in Philly, where they're cut down to like 0.5 or 0.6 or whatever. You look at Marquise Chris, comes in 1.2 fantasy points per minute for the year. Daniel Gafford, 1.09. So those are big time producers, even in limited roles.
Yeah, it's I don't know where. By the way, there's some crazy discussions going on in YouTube chat. Somebody's saying who's better, Steph Curry or Furkan Korkmaz. That is Steph Curry for me. Even if you meant to say Seth Curry, it's still very much Steph Curry comparing the two. Also, somebody else saying that Jokic hasn't been any good lately. So yesterday's game was a blowout, but he came 2 assists shy of a triple-double. So I'll just read off some of his fantasy point totals. 54, 60, 67, 54, 71, 62, 69, 93. Yeah. And 73 the game before. Those are his last handful of games. So we've seen 2 games from Jokic sub 60 fantasy points in the last 2 weeks. One of them he scored, and both of them he scored 54. One of them was a blowout where he played limited minutes. I don't really see this like Jokic just falling apart.
Yeah, not a damn thing in that has anything to do with his productivity or how he's playing. He's actually gone up over the last 3 games. He averages 1.73 fantasy points per minute, leading the league for the course of the year in all situations. Last 3 games, 1.90 fantasy points per minute. So he's up 0.2 fantasy points per minute over the last 3 games. The reason the overall totals at the end of the night have been slightly down, he's averaged 29.3 minutes per game over that stretch. So it's a time thing. It's not a production thing. He's been fine. It's just the other side of the equation. You need the time factor in there.
Yeah, and then also, just to reiterate, the other thing with the Philadelphia 76ers, Korkmaz is out also. Seth Curry's out. Korkmaz is out. Shake Milton is out. That's the 76ers, almost their entire intended backcourt rotation coming into the season when they thought Ben Simmons was going to play. All of them are out except for Maxey. Simmons out. Curry out. Korkmaz out. Milton out. They just don't have guys to create shots out of the backcourt. So hard to not bump up Joel Embiid for me in that situation. He's going to have to shoot a ton today. But let's get into the position by position now and just talking about some of the guards on the slate. I think Luka is a really strong pay-up option, and we have so much value on the slate now at this point. Just like yesterday, where I found it not that difficult to have lineups yesterday's slate. It wasn't that difficult to have lineups that had, Jokic and Giannis both in them. Kind of the same for me today. I think it's very easy to have 2 out of the 3 of Jokic, Embiid, or Luka Doncic in the same lineups. Luka doesn't see some sort of massive usage increase or production increase when Kristaps Porzingis is off the court. But he's still Luka Doncic, who really gives a shit. He's got massive upside. So I'm getting to a lot of, like I said, multiple stars and lineups. Where does Luka rate out for you as a spend-up option? Is he a priority at guard, or is there a different spend-up option at guard that you're prioritizing?
I've got Harden prioritized a little bit ahead of Luka on both sites. Mostly a salary thing, I think, that's really creating the difference. A little bit of an ownership thing, but Harden's just been carrying the Q tag. I expect we're being a little bit conservative with our ownership projection on him. So right now, assuming they both go, Harden coming up, FanDuel 30.2% optimal versus Luka at 15%. So basically twice as frequently optimal for not a massive amount more ownership, 2% more ownership at a lower price. So I'm kind of intrigued by that in the heads up matchup there. And then if you look over DraftKings, 24% optimal for Harden versus 12%, similar situation. He's doubling them up and he costs less, 11.6 versus 11.2. It's a little bit tighter there, but I think head to head, I'm going to lean into the Harden side of things. And on DraftKings, he's getting owned less than Luka is, despite the better rates. So that's again with the Q tag on Harden all afternoon. So we'll see what happens with him in the news. But right now he's outpacing Luka. I do like the spot quite a bit for Luka, 1.63 fantasy points per minute over the last three, put up a 61.9 fantasy point, FanDuel performance in the last game in 38 minutes. We've got him projected out at 35.7 minutes. He could easily go to that 38-minute mark again. Guys on the morning show talked a little bit about when you put the combination of Porzingis and Hardaway together as being out, the rates actually do go up a little bit for Luka. So there's good reasons to get to Luka. He's part of my plans for sure. I just think I'll probably be, if I have to decide to be above the field on one or the other, I'll be above the field on Harden, around the field with Luka.
Yeah. So that once I'm getting to a good chunk of Harden, I get to more of Luka, though. I personally have Luka projected for about 6 more fantasy points than Harden. That's a gap that's hard for me to really narrow just in terms of when I'm building my lineup. So I have more exposure to Luka, but still I get Harden in about 20% of my lineup. So I have no issue going there. Luka's the slightly higher priority for me at the guard position. And once again, almost all my lineups are going to have multiple pay up options. The reason being is because there's so much value for us to get to today. And I don't even, do you see anybody in kind of the upper mid-range of the pricing tier you're getting to a lot of? Because for me, at the guard position, at least, it's Luka and Harden on the high end, and then it's just a bunch of value options.
Yeah, there's a ton of value plays in there. I mentioned the guys from Indy before. I mentioned Chetty before. He's a shooting guard eligible on the DK slate, small forward, power forward on FanDuel. But it is a pretty big mix of a lot of those value guys. There are playable pieces. Like if you want to look around the board, there's Karis LeVert. Jordan Clarkson is 6,400. I don't know. That's kind of like mid-range for me. So he's not really qualifying for that upper tier spot. I was getting to a lot of Russ Westbrook earlier in the day for 8,500 on the FanDuel slate. I'll take Russ Westbrook at that price. Again, the production's been down. We all know the story for the season, 1.14 fantasy points per minute. At 8,500, that's about right for that kind of a production. So take the name off the jersey. If he pops to be the old Russ Westbrook at that price, you're pleasantly surprised. Otherwise, you've got a play that's kind of appropriately priced. But I'm not getting to like massive shares of any of these guys now. It's just kind of breaking down evenly where it's going to Luka, to Harden, to Luka, and then to a lot of the value plays, and then pieces of these other star guys. A lot of the star level guys like Russ and definitely Clarkson from the mid-range are floating into the lineups as I'm sorting them through the filtering process here, through the sim process here. I am getting to a good amount of those guys after the fact in what comes out in lineups. So there is that.
All right, and let's talk about some of the other value plays now. Here's one at the guard position that I think is getting slept on a little bit, and that's Brandon Goodwin. Here's why with Goodwin. And I mean, it's not like he's totally unowned, 13% on FanDuel, 15% on DK, but he's min price on DK, flat min at 3,000 over on FanDuel. He's also the flat min 3,500. I think he starts at point guard today for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So what we saw happen for Cleveland last game, Chetty Osman started at point guard. It was kind of a disaster in terms of, not that Osman himself played poorly. He was great for fantasy purposes, but he's just not a point guard. So in the second half, they started Brandon Goodwin at point guard. Chetty also started, but Chetty just didn't play point guard. And considering how much better the Cavaliers offense looked in the second half of last game, I think we see Goodwin start at point guard again. He was ahead of Rajon Rondo in the rotation last game. He ended up playing 27 minutes, and a lot of that came in the second half. I think we're going to see Goodwin start at point guard and play well over 30 minutes. Now, if we see the starting lineup come out and he's not the starting point guard, I'm going to have to readjust my minutes projections, my assumptions here. But what do you make of Goodwin? Because I think that he's somebody who should be massive chalk on this slate that the field is just not really quite getting to.
Yeah, the field's not really getting there. And I tell you, our minutes projection right now is not really holding up on that. That would have to change for me to really get excited about the play. I 100% get what you're saying. And if he does step into that role at min price, I'm very, very interested across both sites. Let me turn off my phone that's beeping here. So yeah, I do want to get that if we see that news pop and all of a sudden his projection goes to even 28 minutes or something along those lines. And it would definitely take the shine off of that Chetty Osman play a little bit for me. It looks like he's coming down a little in ownership, which is good. It's trending back toward his optimal lineup rates on the Chetty thing. But he was a play that I'm just nervous about getting to a tremendous amount of, getting way up on the field on. So I would be happy if that situation arose. The thing about it to me, though, is Chetty went something like 3 for 16 from the field in that game, but he also racked up 12 assists while facilitating the offense. So he wasn't totally inept in the role. Like, he was facilitating kind of well. And if that shot was falling, he put up a 26.4 FanDuel point performance in 38 minutes while racking up 12 assists. If any of those shots start to fall, that's a nice game. So I kind of still believe in the Chetty side of this, but I would love for Brendan Goodwin to inject himself into the situation so I don't have to get to that much Chetty.
So to read, I still think Chetty starts, and I think he's a really good play. I just think Goodwin starts at point guard today, and I think Dean Wade goes back to the bench. That's what I think the change is here. I think Wade comes off the bench, Goodwin starts in place of him.
Yeah, but if I don't have that uptick for the assist potential with Chetty, I'm a lot less interested in Chetty, I think.
I still don't even get, so like, it's funny. I play Chetty a lot in DFS. I don't think Chetty is actually good though, but it doesn't matter because for fantasy purposes, here's what happens. The last couple of years we've seen this with Chetty. He's when he comes off the bench, he barely plays, but for whatever reason, he goes in the starting lineup. They're like, hey, dude, you're playing 40 plus minutes or something crazy like that. So that's the other thing too, is Chetty doesn't even have to have good points per minute fantasy production. You go out and project him for 40 fantasy points for 40 minutes as, like a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy. And you still end up with him, around 30 fantasy points. So I think given what his price point is on FanDuel and DraftKings, I'm getting to him regardless because I'm giving him a ton of minutes. I just think that Goodwin is somebody else that should be considered in the mix that the field isn't really considering, because just based on my projections and assuming he starts, I think Goodwin should be a guy who's like 35% owned.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if he jumped to the minutes projection that he would get if he was inserted in the starting lineup, he would absolutely be like one of those foundational value guys. He would shoot up the board in terms of the optimal rate, the boom score probability at that dead minimum price. He's a 0.97 fantasy point per minute guy in the limited amount that we see him, 14.9 minutes per game over 11 games this season. I mean, we're not talking about a major sample to create that, but that is what he's done last season. I don't know how many games or minutes this was, but 19% usage. He was a 0.76 guy. Even if you get that 0.76, to your point, at the dead minimum across 30 minutes, I'm fine with going to that. So yeah, if given that news, I would be excited about that play.
Yeah, and by the way, so Chetty started down the stretch of the season for the Cavaliers last year, and here was his minutes. 31 in a blowout, 28 also in a blowout, 37 also. That was, the Cavs got blown out a ton last year. These games are all blowouts. So I'm going through the minutes.
Why does that surprise you? That shouldn't be surprising.
37 also in a blowout, 26 in a blowout. Then it started plays 45 minutes. Another started plays 38 minutes. Then 38 minutes and 37 minutes. The starts before that. It's a lot of minutes. In competitive games, the Cleveland Cavaliers generally play Chetty Osman like around 38 minutes. And considering the amount of guys who are out today, good piece of chalk in my opinion. I'm going to be getting to a bunch of Chetty, so no issues there. You mentioned some of the value on the Pacers. Some of these guys, guard eligible, like Jeremy Lamb, Chris Duarte. Who are the Pacers at guard that you're prioritizing the most?
So let's see. That's a pretty good question. Let me see what's coming up in terms of what went into that crunch, I think is maybe the best way to look at that. So I mentioned LeVert. I'm getting to him a massive amount. He was one of my highest owned overall players on this site behind Jordan Clarkson, who, like I said, I was getting to quite a bit. So only getting like 10 percentage points fewer of LeVert as my second highest owned shooting guard option on FanDuel. Then I'm getting some Torrey Craig. I'm getting Jeremy Lamb, both of those guys around the same amount, just kind of mix and match type pieces for me for those guys over on the FanDuel slate, where they're coming up Lamb 18% optimal. Karis LeVert comes up 26% optimal on FanDuel. That's a little bit the other way around on DK. Karis LeVert 8,200 on DK. He's 7,600 on the FanDuel slate. So different situation. He's 17% optimal on DK. Still totally playable, efficient ownership. But Jeremy Lamb at 3,900 becomes the better play at 22% ownership, or 22% optimal rate, only 16% ownership. Gives him a nice 5% leverage score, 41% boom score probability, shooting guard and small forward eligible. So you stick him in 5 different positions. Nothing not to like about that opportunity. 0.92 fantasy points per minute for the season. Definitely a guy that you can roster over there as kind of a value piece in among the many value pieces we've got.
And anything else at the guard position that's really pressing for you? To me, I mean, those are really the core guys for me. paying up for Luka, paying up for Harden. Then if I'm going cheap, Brandon Goodwin, Chris Duarte, Jeremy Lamb, Chetty Osman with guard eligibility. It's really a stars and scrubs position. The whole entire slate is stars and scrubs for me. To a lesser extent, I think Spencer Dinwiddie is a decent bounce back option. I think people are off him after what happened yesterday. Listen, he had 9 assists. He had 7 rebounds yesterday. He just didn't make his shots. He scored 7 points, and he generally has a increased usage rate in games that Bradley Beal is out. So I'm going back to Spencer Dinwiddie, but just because of the way the slate shakes up, I don't get to as much as I had yesterday because of the stars and scrubs nature of the slate. Anything else important for you at point guard or shooting guards, Harry?
I mean, I'm getting a mix of a lot of these different guys on the FanDuel slate, right? So I'm getting to some LaMelo. I'm getting to some Mike Conley. I'm getting to some Josh Giddey. All these guys that are coming up in the teens in terms of the optimal lineup rates. There's kind of a logjam from the mid-20s down through the mid-teens in terms of our optimal lineup rates. Our boom score probabilities on a lot of these guards on the FanDuel slate look really, really similar. And the vast majority of the playable guys have multi-position eligibility. So you can just mix and match these guys and swap them in different combinations to your heart's content. There's nice leverage scores on a lot of these guys. Like getting to LaMelo Ball, 21% optimal and only 12% owned, 9 leverage score is a fantastic move when you can afford it. Putting him alongside like a James Harden and getting to a lot of upside from the guard positions, figuring out some of the value is a differentiated kind of a play that comes up pretty optimal. And both of those guys, it's strong positive leverage scores. There are just a lot of different ways to put the guard positions together. It's the same but different on DK, where there's the same logjam, but that logjam exists more from like 12% to 8% optimal. So it's just not as appealing to go to a lot of those guys. I'd rather just stick at the top end of the optimal rates on the DK slate, play around with some of the boom score guys, and just dance in through, maybe the pay up options, like some of the star caliber guys, like a LaMelo would still maybe be part of my plans. 10% optimal, 7% ownership on DK. I can get behind that, but a lot of the other guys become less appealing.
And we mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie kind of in passing that I brought him up. We just got a super chat from Art Cathels who asked the question about him. Do you think I could survive getting away from Dinwiddie in DK GPPs and $100 single entry GPP with 444 entries? I have exposure to Dinwiddie. He's, like I said before, though, not a massive priority play for me, and he isn't for the field either. I think, once again, there's so much value on this slate, and there's so many good guys to pay up for. It makes sense to go stars and scrubs, and it's not hard to envision a scenario where Spencer Dinwiddie scores 40 fantasy points, is great points per dollar, but isn't in the optimal lineup, because I think we have a lot of cheap plays that have potential to score, around 25 to 30 fantasy points today. And then if you pair that with Luka, Harden, Jokic, Embiid, any of those guys could go for 70 plus fantasy points today. And I kind of think that's the most likely optimal lineup combination. But Spencer Dinwiddie is projected for 14% ownership on DK and 12% over on FanDuel. Let me see if that's changed. Yeah, still 12%. If you get to him,
it makes it harder to survive, right? If you put Dinwiddie into a DraftKings lineup at this point, I think it makes it harder to survive because it limits the rate at which you can get to combinations of those stars.
Yeah, I have no issue at all with not getting to Spencer Dinwiddie today. So no issue. Let me see, my top projected lineups
to succeed, no doubt about it. But like at 5,800, there are better plays now that have exceeded him. Could he be in that optimal lineup? Absolutely. Could he smash this slate? Absolutely. People have surpassed him on the slate, and the ability to get to other combinations he doesn't allow just kind of surpasses his value.
He's in about 15% of my lineups right now. I'm not that different from the field, and he's not in any of my highest projected lineups either. So I don't think he's a must play by any stretch of the imagination. Super chat from Matthew Etheridge. Can you tell us the top 5 optimal plays on DK? So let's do this a couple of ways, Terry. I'm going to look at my exposure and just kind of go through the players I'm getting the most in my lineups right now. But I also want you to bring up the boom bust tool and just read off who are the 5 players that have the highest projected odds to land in the optimal lineup. In terms of guys that I'm getting the most exposure to, it's Chetty Osman, Luka Doncic, Isaiah Jackson, Jeremy Lamb, Nikola Jokic. Those are the guys who, at least in my lineups, are popping up most frequently. Boom bust tool, what shows as the 5 most optimal plays?
Yep. So you're all over that. That was a very, very strong list as compared to our optimal lineup column here. The one replacement would be James Harden over Luka Doncic. So by optimal lineup rate across positions, we're saying Chetty Osman, number 1, Isaiah Jackson, James Harden, Torrey Craig, Jeremy Lamb, and we'll sneak in 2 plays because it's Karis LeVert and then Nikola Jokic. I wanted to get it down to Jokic for that guy. So you got 2 stars in the top 7 by optimal lineup rate, and then a bunch of value plays. You can put together whatever you want. Most of those guys have multi-position across a unique mix of positions, and you could honestly get to a 3rd star if you put together just that list of players.
Yeah, and we've got a couple more super chats to get to, and that'll be a good launching point to get to the forward position. But first, the sponsor of tonight's show is PrizePicks. If you guys have not signed up for PrizePicks, you can head on over to the site. It's prop-based DFS cards, and we've got really useful tools over on Awesemo.com. Odd Shopper, free to use. Check that out. We've got all prop bets and all the legal sports books near you. You look at that. We've got projected odds for them to go over, under, expected projected ROI. Really useful tool if you're using prop bets. Also useful if you're playing over on PrizePicks. Also useful if you're on PrizePicks. Signing up using that promo code Awesemo, you get a $100 bonus on your first deposit. You also get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, which keeps Terry in work because you deal with all the customer service of people emailing and asking how to get hooked up with that. But also you get access to our projections, ownership projections, all of that help you win some money in NBA DFS. And we'll be talking about PrizePicks for the 30 minutes after the slate locks, going through some of the top picks in Odd Shopper. And you guys should stick around for that. A lot of injury news, that stuff that could break too. Let's hit on some of these super chats now. First from Bean Clover Gaming. This isn't really a question. He's just saying it's a statement. Isaiah Jackson is going for 2010 tonight. Yes, he is. I think this is the perfect place to start at the forward position. Terry, how do you view Isaiah Jackson as a fairly popular play today?
I just mentioned he's our 2nd most frequently optimal player on the DraftKings slate. He's right up there on the FanDuel slate. I'll get to the board in a minute. I'm just waiting for a column to sort on a different Excel file here. It'll happen. There we go. Just popped up. So 26.1% optimal. Call it top 2 or 3 on the FanDuel slate. 27.1% on the DK slate. Nothing not to like. 28.5 minute projection. I could easily see him cresting 30. We've got him projected over and around 35 fantasy points on both sites with nearly 50% boom score probability. There is nothing not to like about that play. And it's one where I'm kind of willing to ignore that the ownership is slightly ahead of the optimal lineup rates, creating a negative leverage situation. Technically, he just looks like a nice foundational piece. It's not an extreme value. He's more of like a mid-range value, but he comes up so frequently optimal that I'm excited to get there and happy to include him in lineups. He makes things work.
These are really good points from a fantasy producer, and there are no other big men available on the Pacers. When I say no other, that's a literal statement. Like, this isn't me exaggerating. There are no other big men but Isaiah Jackson on this team. Isaiah Jackson for the season plays 10 minutes per game, averaging 12.5 fantasy points, really good points per minute production. And I think the 2nd tallest available player for the Pacers today is Torrey Craig. I brought this up when I was doing my injury report show earlier, and I actually meant to look at the team page just to see the 2nd tallest player is.
Looking at it now.
There's no size because they have everybody who's big on this team is out other than Isaiah Jackson. Goga Bitadze out. TJ Warren out. O'Shea Brissett out. Domantas Sabonis out. Miles Turner out. There are no other big men. All of them are injured. We've got Domantas Sabonis, who's in the COVID protocols, coincidentally the same exact time as Adam Schur. Make of that what you will. But I think looking at this team and the matchup, they're playing the Orlando Magic, Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Bamba in the front court. Like, is there going to be a situation where like Terry Taylor or Torrey Craig is guarding a 7'3" Mo Bamba? I find that hard to believe. So Isaiah Jackson, unless he gets in foul trouble, he's playing a lot more minutes than he played last game. And as is, Isaiah Jackson scored, 45 fantasy points in 29 minutes last game. And I just talked about all the points per minute production from this year. It was actually 46.5 in 29 minutes. It's not unreasonable to think that he plays like 34 minutes today, barring foul trouble. And you're looking at over 40 fantasy points, considering his current points per minute production. I find it really difficult to get away from him. Must play him in cash games.
Yep, absolutely. Definitely a smash spot in the cash games and somebody I want to roster aggressively in tournament format too. I believe you're correct. Torrey Craig at 6'7" is the next tallest player available for them today. So that's just not going to work. He's going to have to play. You mentioned the recent performance, 1.62 fantasy points per minute over his last 3 games in 23.5 minutes a night, 1.32 across all situations for the entire course of the season in his 18 games. Limited small sample again, but still a kid who can perform when he's out there, and we expect him to be out there.
Yeah, it's problematic, the size of the Pacers, what they have left, like I said. So that's somebody who I'm getting to a bunch. Terry, who are the other forwards that are popping up really meaningfully in your lineups that aren't guys that have guard eligibility we already talked about?
Let's take a look over here. Let me pop that back onto this thing. So I was getting to a good amount of Anthony Davis on the FanDuel slate. I'll just throw that out there. He's a name that I expect to see quite a bit of at the star level throughout most of what I'm doing, unless he's disappeared from this board. I don't know. Did he get scratched and I didn't catch it? That would be bad.
Sorry, I missed what you just said. I was answering a Discord channel question that I knew we weren't going to have time to talk about on the show.
Oh, I know what I did. All right. I assume he's just a center over there. Anthony Davis was coming up a lot for me on the FanDuel site is what I was saying as I was stalling for time. But now that I've got it sorted to just to forwards on both sites, let me just jump back over to that. So we talked about Jackson. We talked about Cedi Osman, some of the different guys from the Pacers there. Just going down the board. You just mentioned Wendell Carter on the other side of that awkward Indy situation. That's a spot where maybe he could take advantage of that. 6,200 power forward and center eligible on the DK slate. He's 14.6% optimal, nice boom score probability, but I hate that he's getting owned to a pretty big aggressive clip there. Negative 11.8 leverage. He's getting owned 26.4% of the time. 1.09 fantasy point per minute contributor, 1.08 over the last 3 games. So he's been right there. I don't know that I love that spot, but I think at 6,200, it would come up more than it is for me on FanDuel at 6,700 with the same positioning. I was getting to quite a bit of Evan Mobley on FanDuel earlier in the day. Again, a guy who's coming up pretty strongly negatively leveraged, but I like the spot 6,900 center and power forward eligibility. You can move him around, coming up 24% of the time optimal. Owned at a 35% clip, but a little bit of a tiebreaker in a 40% boom score probability. I think the 6,900 is a little bit light for him. So I'm happy to get there. He's a fantasy point per minute guy. We've got him projected out at 36 minutes tonight. So I think that works for me over there. 7,400 kind of takes the gleam off of it on the DK slate. He's 13% optimal, owned 19% of the time. A lot less appealing over there. We talked about Marquise Chris for the min price on DK at the top of the show. He's a $5,000 power forward on FanDuel. He's completely off the board on one site. He's firmly on the board as a value play on the DraftKings slate. A lot of other guys mix and match types.
Yeah, by the way, Bill W followed up. Bill, we did hit on your super chat earlier. Just to follow back on that, his super chat was single entry center pay down with Pell, Chris, Gafford, or pay up. Both Terry and I agreed that we're more apt to pay up at the center position. But I do want to get back and just circle onto one of the guys you had asked us a question about, because I think that Marquise Chris is very high upside value play. So what we're going to get from a minute standpoint, I have no clue. And I don't know there's any player who I've been burned by more over the last few years than Marquise Chris. And NBA teams have been burned by him too. He's played on like 6 teams over the last few years and has generally been not good from a real life standpoint anywhere. As a fantasy producer, though, the guy puts up fantasy points when he gets on the court, and Dallas is lacking bodies in the front court because Kristaps Porzingis was ruled out. And if you look at what we've gotten from Marquise Chris in the last couple of games, he scored over 20 fantasy points in each of those games. The minutes haven't been really high, but I think there's an opportunity for him to play like 22 to 24 minutes without Kristaps Porzingis. That makes him somebody that's pretty interesting to me. And then also, if you look at the current ownership right now for Marquise Chris, he is projected for 0.1% ownership on FanDuel. He's also priced up a little bit there. But then over on DK, we've got Marquise Chris right now at 11% ownership at the flat min. I'm overweight to the field on Marquise Chris. 5K on FanDuel, that's a little bit steep. I don't really want to go there. But at least on DK, which is what Bill W's question is about, how do you view a flat min Marquise Chris, Terry?
Yeah, I love it. I mentioned it earlier. I wrote about him in my article today, which is up on the site, so you can hop over there and check out even more thoughts about him, Bill. But I think that you can get away with playing a lineup that starts with Chris and Gafford in it on the DK slate at the dead minimum in 3,100, then put in one of the star centers, and then go from there probably to like a Harden or a Luka. I think that's a great start to a build on DK. At 3,000, Marquise Chris has a ton of value. He's a 1.2 fantasy point per minute producer for all situations and is, again, very limited sample this season. Over the last 14 minutes a game, 1.81 fantasy points per minute, 38.3 in 19 minutes the last time out. We've got him projected at 16.2, but like you said, he has upside to 24 minutes in this situation. And if you give him that here, he's coming up 12.5% optimal, 32.5% boom score probability, and a 20-point projection on 16 minutes. If we give him another 8 minutes on top of that, he explodes for value. So yeah, that would make him one of, if not the top overall play on the slate if you were giving him that kind of minutes, I think, and an absolute smash spot on DK. And I still wouldn't be that interested in him on the FanDuel slate for 5,000. A little bit more so, but a lot less than on DK.
Yeah, and so now I see. So we've got more super chats to answer. I didn't realize Bill W left another super chat. That's what he's referring to. So now that I'm looking at my list of super chats, he's next on the list there. But he needs a 3,900 or under DK single entry shooting guard small forward. He already is Lamb. So shooting guard or small forward, 3,900 or under. So I'm down with Lamb. Lamb is somebody who I have a good amount of exposure to. Let's see, 3,900 and under. Who is popping up next in my projections? So 3,900 and under. Number one for me is Jeremy Lamb. Next up is Chimezie Metu for me. Oh no, he's a power forward. Let's see. So it has to be a shooting guard or a small forward.
Yeah, that 39 is a bitch. Can we find 500 more and get 4,400? We've got a little bit to work with there. We can get to Torrey Craig at 4,200. Find me a couple more bucks, Bill.
So here's the issue. The guy I have next is Kenrich Williams, but I also have him in 0 lineups today. So it's hard for me to really recommend Kenrich Williams. If it has to be somebody 3,900 with small forward eligibility or shooting guard, the answer is Kenrich Williams, but not really somebody I particularly love in that pricing range.
Yeah, by the optimal lineup rate, if we want to go with that, you can get Denny Avdija at 25.7 minutes, 3,800 small forward, power forward. I don't love it, 4.3% optimal. Nobody in the world is rostering him. He's 0.3% ownership, solid little leverage score there. There's just not a lot of meat on the bone there. I got burnt by Denny. I think it was just last night. I don't really love going back to it, but if you're desperate, Bill, and you can't make any additional salary work to get to like 42 or 4,400, then maybe Denny's your guy there too. But I don't disagree with who you were just saying either. So not a good spot there. That's one where I'd love to peel back that lineup, given a little bit more time.
Super chat from Justin Alberto. Royce O'Neal or Dorian Finney-Smith? I prefer Dorian Finney-Smith. If Jordan Clarkson's out, that really narrows the gap there, but it's still DFS for me with Porzingis out.
Yeah. DFS for me right now, and probably even if that situation changes, on the FanDuel slate at 4,200, he ranks out nicely with multi-position. He's a little bit less appealing on the DK slate, a little bit more expensive against the lower cap, but I think he's my answer either way there.
Steven Adams officially ruled in. Not something that's going to change anything too much for me on today's slate. Terry, just to kind of put a bow on the forward position, who are the guys that we have not yet talked about that you think are pretty high priority plays? One that I'm going to throw out right now is Rudy Gay. All the injuries for the Utah Jazz, and also potential for Jordan Clarkson not to play. I think Rudy Gay could move into the starting lineup and play extended minutes. Other than that, we've talked about a lot of the guys that, at least to me, are going to be important at the position. This is a spot I'm really saving salary, not the many pay up forwards that I want to get to. Who are the forwards that are important to you that we have not yet brought up yet?
There's a lot of mixed bag of value. So like I threw Evan Mobley out there before. I'm getting to a good amount of him. We haven't really talked him up, but he's definitely on my board on FanDuel. A guy that I'm noticing a little bit through some of these sim lineup results at a very cheap price is Al Horford, 5,500 on the FanDuel slate, coming 10% optimal, 5,200 DK, 11% optimal. Field is trailing him on both sites. Not the most exciting play in the world, but at that price, he could work there and make some other things work. We just talked about Dorian Finney-Smith at a higher price from the Celtics. I can take Jason Tatum shares all day long whenever I get to them. I never have a problem rostering him. He's not coming up aggressively for me, but I'm happy to get there when I do. Not really getting to many shares of like Kevin Love or any of these mid-range guys. Jaren Jackson wasn't really coming up for me. These guys who typically do make it into lineups for me and just aren't really. Similar story with like Julius Randle. I might have a couple shares of him. He's 7% optimal FanDuel, 5% optimal DK. Miles Bridges might have a few shares just on raw medium projection, but 7,900 doesn't really do a ton for me on the FanDuel slate. 8% optimal, 8,400 on DK multi-position, but only 5% optimal. These are guys who are just kind of mix and match pieces for me right now.
Yeah, other forwards. I mean, once, Chetty is forward eligibility. Jeremy Lamb does. Somebody asked a super chat about Dorian Finney-Smith. I like him a whole bunch. Isaiah Jackson's going to be chalk, but I still like getting to him. Marquise Chris mentioned him as more of a contrarian option. Really cheap for me at forward today. And transitioning to the center position, this is where I'm spending up. Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid. I don't even know what I'm going to do. Well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make pivots if Jokic ends up getting ruled out, but I think he's going to end up being really under-owned today because of that questionable tag heading into lock. We know the upside of Nikola Jokic. We talked about him a little bit at the top, but now we've gotten, 5 minutes to go into lock with no update on Nikola Jokic. How do you think this impacts his ownership, and what does it make you want to do with him in tournaments?
I hope it drives his ownership down. Like you were just saying, he's somebody that I want to roster aggressively all the time. I've got a good amount of them. Came up a little bit lighter in at least the way I've got it sorted here. I think I got to him in some of the earlier lineups that I put in. So I was getting to a ton of them, but it looks like some Joel Embiid has caught up to him. Some of the Anthony Davis shares just in lineups that went in different directions in like the middle and the guard and the forward spots went to some other directions to some cheaper centers here. But Jokic is somebody I definitely want to roster the hell out of, and I'm hoping that the ownership drives down, and I would try and pivot to more shares of them if I can, if we get him confirmed in, if I find myself trailing the field on him.
All right, let's rapid fire some of these super chats. We just got a bunch that came in. From Austin Drake, what do you think of Blake Griffin today? A lot of value. No reason to roster Blake Griffin at this point. I know the Nets are banged up in the front court. It's hard for me to imagine he's going to land in an optimal lineup. Did you get to Blake Griffin at all?
I sincerely doubt it. 3,600, 0.4% optimal on FanDuel, 1.5% optimal on DK, 17-minute projection. Nothing really there for me for Blake Griffin. It's not entirely outside the realm of possibility, but it's a real fingernail of a possibility.
Super chat here from Gabriel Meffrin. Danny Green or Brandon Goodwin for FanDuel value, both are 3,500. That is Goodwin for me. I know Danny Green is starting, but generally is pretty capped upside. The Sixers have been cautious with his minutes. Maybe he plays more today because they're so shorthanded. But the last time, let's see, when's the last time Danny Green really played significant minutes? The answer for me is Goodwin. Is it the same for you, Goodwin over Green?
Yeah, just go to the guy who's a better per minute performer. Danny Green comes in 0.72 per minute over the course of the entire season, all different situations, 0.74 over the last 3 games. Nothing really there. Never really get to Danny Green all that much. Not a player I get excited about.
Last 3 starts for Danny Green, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 24 minutes, 23 minutes. I don't know that he's just going to go out and play a massive amount of minutes. I still have him projected for 26. I'd rather get to Goodwin, assuming he starts. If Goodwin doesn't start, then the answer is neither. Sean Raza, would you recommend having Nurkic and AD or Russ and AD for a FanDuel GPP? I prefer. I mean, I don't really know how Russ versus Nurkic is the comparison point there, but I'd rather have Russ than Nurkic if we're just talking about projection with LeBron out. So Nurkic and AD for you, or Russ and AD?
Russ and AD, I guess. I guess that's using a util spot there. Yeah, I think I would go. Well,
not on. Maybe
it's a FanDuel question.
Yeah, maybe it's a single game contest.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that could be. Yeah, I really like Russ at the 8,500 price on FanDuel. He's 94 over on DK, so it was a different play. 23% optimal. That would be my choice on the FanDuel slate.
Super chat from Corey Randall. Thoughts on a 3,900 Reggie Bullock? Maybe that'll help the last person super chat. I don't think I've played Reggie Bullock once so far this season. I'll look at my projection for him tonight. I've got Reggie Bullock projected for under 20 fantasy points. He's not a good points per minute fantasy producer. It's hard for me to get there for him. So no go on me for Reggie Bullock. And I assume your answer is going to be the same. But one more question. DK, Eric Gordon or Jalen Green, or better pivot for 4,500 and under for guard eligibility? Let's see, who's your favorite guard, 4,500 or under for tonight, Terry? DK.
45 or under, Jeremy Lamb, 3,900.
Let's see. I'm scrolling. It is Jeremy Lamb for me. If you already have Jeremy Lamb in, then the answer, Eric Gordon's actually my second highest projected player there. So Eric Gordon to me would be the answer of those guys. If you already have Jeremy Lamb, go with Eric Gordon there.
Or find an extra $100 and go to Chetty.
That is, I mean, I assume he probably already has Chetty at small forward, but
you would hope. If you don't, then yeah, that's your answer. Go to that and figure something else out.
All right. That is going to bring us to lock. Good luck today, guys, but don't go anywhere. If you are going to leave Terry and I here first, that makes me very sad. But second of all, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel on the way out. But Terry and I are not going anywhere. Next 30 minutes, we're going to chop up some prize picks. Also, any breaking news that comes out. And there's some big ones. I'm going to read off the injury report in a second. We're going to be talking about it from a prize picks perspective. But of course, we're going to be covering it from a FanDuel and DK perspective as well. So a little bit of something for everybody. Here are the players that are still on the injury report. Nikola Jokic, questionable. De'Aaron Fox, questionable. Jordan Clarkson, questionable. Aaron Gordon, questionable. All names that could have some pretty big impacts on the slate. Not to mention, we're waiting on the Cavaliers starting lineup. If Goodwin ends up starting, that's going to be important to me. But Terry, why don't you bring up Odd Shopper? And while you're doing that, I'm going to go over to PrizePicks, and we could try to start to find what our favorite plays are over on PrizePicks as we go through this. And also at the same time, I'm going to pull up the NBA games on my second screen. Hopefully this isn't like yesterday where I'm doing this, pulling the games up, and all of a sudden it's doing that authentication thing. And so I'm on the show, I'm trying to pull the game up. It's like, hey, is this a fire hydrant? I'm like, not now, computer. I promise I'm not a robot, but I'm trying to do multiple things. So people talk about how difficult they think it is to update lineups, answer people's questions in chat and all that while we're doing a show. Imagine also doing that while trying to do one of those dumb prove you're a human being quizzes from the internet.
Traffic lights in the photo there. Yeah. Yeah, I caught that part of the show yesterday when you were struggling with that.
All right, so we've got two games about to start. Pacers, Magic, 76ers, Wizards. Which one do you think I should pull up?
Sixers game. Let's see what goes on with Embiid.
All right, when that starts, that will definitely be pulled up. Another super chat here. This is from Bean Clover Gaming. His wife will leave if you don't win. Well, good news for you. If you like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You're 8 times more likely to win money tonight. So there's your solution. You like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And a couple of things. Number one, I hope you win money tonight. Number two, if not, maybe your wife just kind of sucks, right? If her entire value in you is tied up in whether you win the February 2nd DFS contests, maybe she's a little too shallow. There's a better one out there for you, Bean Clover Gaming.
What a guy trying to keep her around, right? Like he's obviously going out of his way for his lady who's thrown down the gauntlet here and really given him an agenda that he's got to live up to. So I don't know. I think maybe it's motivated him here. Maybe she knew how to kick him in the ass properly. Yeah,
here's the other thing that I think is is her boyfriend good at DFS? Like, is that the issue here? Or maybe you're like, hey, I'm not winning money at DFS. My wife's boyfriend is crushing it right now. Maybe that's the situation. I don't know. I need more details here, and maybe we could play some love doctor here, and that would help out a little bit.
Bring us your personal questions, everybody. It's what we're here for part of the show.
Well, we're just here for relationship questions. We could play. I'll be Dr. Philip. Let's see. We got. I have what. I don't know what. Oh! Tyler's question. I don't know what the pertinence of this, but. Tyler's pointing out that another 2222 title, because today, February 2nd, 2022, won't be possible for 100 years. But you know what's even better? What about when we get February 22nd, 2022, just 20 days from now? That's going to be even cooler. All right, Terry, do you have
from 11.
Terry, do you have PrizePicks pulled up? We could start.
I've got one of our betting pages pulled up. I'm good. What are we going to talk about?
Another super chat here. Adam Palmer, she wears the pants for sure. Seems likely. If she's threatening to lose him, if she's threatening to divorce him because he doesn't make money tonight, that would be certainly be an indication she wears the pants in the relationship. What rate out?
That works for me.
Terry, over on OddsShopper, what's right now some of the best prop bets to look at? And also, guys, don't forget, as we're talking about PrizePicks, sign up using that promo code Awesemo. You get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit and 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Now we're going to use OddsShopper, some of the tools over at Awesemo.com to find some of the best plays to make on to play over on PrizePicks. And who knows, maybe our friend Clover could win some money on PrizePicks, right? Maybe he doesn't win money on FanDuel and DraftKings, but he could press his wife and be like, look, I hit a flex play on PrizePicks for 1.25x my entry fee. Stay with me, baby. Maybe that'll work. What are the top projected props for today?
Yeah, so just poking around the board a little bit. One of the guys who I mentioned was coming up quite a bit for me from the start here. Anthony Davis standing at a pretty strong probability of going under his points prop, which the one on the site that I'm looking at our betting tool on the site, which jibes with OddsShopper, like you said, 27.5 was the points prop on him. What do we have him on PrizePicks?
News. This is big for me. Starting at point guard for the Cleveland Cavaliers today, Brandon Goodwin. Let's go. Brandon Goodwin. I don't think anybody was projecting him. I feel very good about myself now.
It's a good call by you. That really is. I like that a lot. I hope you got into some of my lineups here.
There we go. Yeah, so I mean, Brandon Goodwin, flat min on FanDuel and DraftKings as a starting point guard Fire him up. I mean, we should have been rostering him already because, like I said, I was expecting him to start. Yeah. But look at this production for him last game. He came off the bench, played 27 minutes, scores 26 fantasy points last game. He's going to, and also keep in mind, 27 minutes with 5 personal fouls. He's going to start today. We could be looking like 32, 34 minutes from a flatman point guard. Play some Brandon Goodwin today. Guys should have been doing it already, but now play him.
Wouldn't be shocking at all if that was like a 35-point performance from him on both sides. So nice little chunk of value that jumped out to that. Honestly, not a lot. That wasn't, like you just said, that wasn't talked about on a lot of sites throughout the industry throughout the day. I'm sure we didn't really hit it too hard throughout the day. I'm glad you brought it up on our show here, but probably a lot of people not going to have that in lineup. So definitely a compelling little play there.
Yeah, he was in. I mean, he still is.
Yeah, we've got time to switch to that too.
Yeah, he's in my highest projected lineup today, and this was. I mean, I've been assuming he was going to start, so this doesn't change anything for me. But still, he's in my highest projected lineup in both FanDuel and DraftKings today.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that's one of those things that we talk about a lot when people, ask about some of these lower end plays. It's just that leveling up that it creates from one position to the rest of the positions. Now you've got extra money to spend, and you're just foundationally ratcheting up what the tiers of production that lineup can reach.
Yep. So if you guys were rostering Goodwin, keep rostering him. If you guys were not playing him, get some exposure to him. And also, big news. It appears that Brandon Goodwin officially has the green check mark on DraftKings, which, as we know, that is the verified sign that somebody is a good play, as Eric Lindquist knows that we only play guys with the green check marks over on DK, the best news. The best source of news that the world has ever known. It's right. It's in terms of sources of news, it's Wikipedia, like John 73564 * on Twitter, and DK player cards. 3 best sources of news you can find on the internet. It's those 3 right there.
Absolutely. I get all my news from the DK news, not even just sports. I just go to them for everything.
Yeah, me too. If I want the weather, I go to the DK app and be like, am I wearing shorts today? Am I wearing long sleeves? You go outside like, oh, it's snowing, but the DK app tells me it's 70 degrees outside. So we got to trust those green check marks in the DK app. So play him up. Let's get back to PrizePicks now. Kind of got thrown off there because that's a very important piece of news that Goodwin is starting. But what were you about to say as somebody who was popping up as a really positive prop? And don't forget, leave off anybody from 76ers, Wizards, or Pacers Magic at this point.
Yeah. So one that I was safely going to a West Coast spot because I'm terrible at picking the games that have already started was Anthony Davis. I mentioned his fairly strong on our betting tool here for the under 27.5 is his points line, just raw real life points. We've got him going under that 69% probability, projected for just 23.57. I have a good amount of Anthony Davis at this point in my FanDuel lineup, so I'd like him to cruise through that one. What are you seeing on that one? Where does it come down on PrizePicks?
Let's see. Anthony Davis. 25.5 points for Anthony Davis. Let's see. What's his fantasy score? Fantasy score 46.5. What'd you say our projection is?
So our point projection was only 23.57 real life points. That was against a 27.5. So fairly similar line. I think you said it was 2 real points lower, but that doesn't really flip a 69% under probability to anything that I want to chase for the over. So I think I'd still be strongly under on that one. And then our fantasy point projection on Mr. Davis, if I can get to the page that he might actually appear on, was on it's 47 on DK scoring, 47 on both sites, fantasy points. So I think it was right around what you just said.
Well, that's actually, I have Anthony Davis points projected quite a bit higher than what we have over on the site. So that would be a stay away for me. I'll just bring up his numbers this year with LeBron James off the court and let's see what those look like. And maybe that will be something that could change my opinion. By the way, LeBron James officially listed as doubtful today, hasn't been ruled out, but for all intents and purposes, he's not going to end up playing today. This year, Anthony Davis with LeBron off the court, he has 30% usage rate. He's scoring, let's see, per minute, 1.4 fantasy points, it's a pretty big usage bump for him with LeBron off the court. That's going to have to be a stay away for me.
Yeah, based on Alex's numbers, I mean, that's one of the higher ones in terms of the point scoring, looking at the under. But for me, I mean, everything that I was doing DFS-wise was expecting a bigger game than that from Anthony Davis for me. So that's why it kind of stood out when I saw it at the top of the board for an under. I'm definitely hoping it goes the other way, but maybe I wouldn't chase it. I'd probably stay away as well, like you said.
Super chat from Ryan Nelson 02. Greg buys all of his stuff from the DK store. That is incorrect. I mostly wear free clothing that people send to me. Imagine thinking that I spend my I don't spend my crowns on stuff on the DK store. I hoard them for I hoard them until I accidentally am entering lineups on the app and hit the crowns thing instead of the and that's what I use them for. Occasionally, I think I did that recently, but I have like 300,000 crowns right now. I don't know what that's equivalent to in real life money, but
yeah, I mean, how many? Well, it translates to TVs, right? Adam, how many crowns did Adam spend on 5 TVs?
Yeah, Adam, the last time they had a sale on the DK store, he went and bought 5 TVs for his home. Let's see. And
yet he doesn't watch movies. The list of movies he hasn't seen that they were going through on the show the other day was astounding. I don't know how you don't leave one of 5 TVs just on HBO, whatever. I assume he's catching up on TV in his hotel room all sick, though. Feel better, Adam.
So people are freaking out right now. Apparently, Isaiah Jackson immediately got hurt in the Pacers Magic game. Let's see what the deal is here. We're only 30 seconds into the game. That would be quite devastating for me if he got hurt, just like the other day when Porzingis got hurt early. Let's see what the deal is. It's in a commercial break, so I don't even know. Let's see what I can find online. Is this? Oh, this is real. Isaiah Jackson hurt almost immediately. This is potentially bad news bears for me. I have a lot of Isaiah Jackson.
Yeah, I'm just checking what my exposures are, but I'm guessing that's going to be pretty concerning for me too. You just mentioned the Porzingis one that wiped out so many lineups for me the other day. It's going to be the same story unless he's emotionally injured or something. Then maybe.
No, it's a foot injury. Let's see what happened.
Foot injuries are the worst for basketball players too.
Let's see. I'm trying to look up a highlight somewhere, look online and see what happens. Is there anything worse than a Slate ending 30 seconds in? Like we're not even, this is how much time is on the clock. This game is 22 seconds in and the chalkiest play on the slate has gotten hurt. 22 seconds in.
I'm suddenly demotivated to make my Brandon Goodwin swaps because all my lineups are dead. Not all, but the vast majority are not going to be sitting pretty after that news.
Yeah, and so they're coming out of commercial timeout. And this is ridiculous too. So we've got Terry in now for that's a bad one too. So it's an ankle injury. He went up to block a shot, lands right on Wendell Carter Jr.'s foot, and it's one of those ones where his foot like rolls up high enough that it's like touching his ankle. Yeah. No good. Nope. Even it's a high ankle sprain
wise or whatever. Yeah, he's out for the game. He's.
I mean, we'll have to see how he bounces back here, but yeah, first play of the game, and now now Mo Bamba is being guarded by, let's see.
Yeah, that's right. He was their only big guy too.
Yeah, so this is hilarious. I wish I could screenshot this, but there's probably like copyright issues. But yeah, so Terry is guarding him now. Let's see. What is his height? Pacers roster. The height difference between these two is absolutely absurd. So the Pacers roster, he's like 8. I think he's like 8 inches taller than him. It looks like. All right.
Yeah, I mean he's 6'7" or under. 6'7" was the next guy.
Terry Taylor is now playing center for the Indiana Pacers. By the way, he just got a rebound over Mo Bamba and then got a putback. But Terry Taylor is 6'5", 230 pounds now guarding Mo Bamba. Mo Bamba is significantly bigger than that. Let's look at Mo Bamba's dimensions. Mo Bamba is
access to this game.
All right, so Mo Bamba is listed at 7 foot tall, 231.
All right, so like weight wise, I can see him getting in there, and maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just needs to. The leverage is going to be a problem. I think with Mo Bamba being a lot taller, but weight wise, he can maybe out position him, grab some rebounds. Maybe he can get in there, throw his body around. God, it's going to be a disaster.
But I do think it's funny. Someone's like, "Can we talk about the late slate now?" Which is a pretty funny. Yeah, this is like the football slate because obviously football injuries happen very frequently. With football, when you guys get hurt, it's like, all right, time to start building the showdown lineups. Kind of what this NBA slate feels like now. I have Isaiah Jackson in the majority of my lineups. If he doesn't come back, that would be a pretty big issue. I'm not going to get back most of my entry fees today. What can you do? Somebody gets hurt. Somebody gets hurt 20 seconds into the game. You know what you do? You go over to PrizePicks and look for some props to play. A super chat from Orion. FanDuel GPP have a heavy stars and scrubs lineup where I've Metu, Josh Green, and Dennis Smith. Should I swap those three? If so, to who?
Yes.
I think I have a couple lineups with Josh Green and Metu. I definitely don't have lineups with Dennis Smith Jr., but none of those guys are very high priority plays.
Is there a chance did he abbreviate it as DSJ and maybe he meant DFS, Dorian Finney-Smith? That's a much better play. That was like, I don't think anybody mentioned Dennis Smith Jr. today.
No.
I don't know where that came from. Yeah, yes, definitely you want to swap those guys out.
The other thing, I can't get over this. The other funny thing about Terry guarding Bamba is Bamba's just standing like in the corner on the perimeter. He's towering over him. If Mo Bamba was to take a jump shot while he was being guarded by Taylor, it would be the equivalent of no defense. He's so much taller than him. There's nothing he could do about it. By the way, Jackson officially questionable to return today. Maybe he'll get it taped up and he'll be feeling good.
Dicey. But I mean, we're already losing a pretty key piece of the game for him. Like, even if he comes back, just gives us that second half, we're getting 14 fantasy points or whatever. Like, we're already basically shot in the foot unless he has a dramatic second half.
Yeah. By the way, people in chat saying, "Oh, I thought he was supposed to be a good chalk play." Like, I projected him to play more than 20 seconds today. It wasn't within the range of outcomes. Obviously, injuries could happen at any point in time, but
give him under a minute and he will project universally poorly. I guarantee you.
Yeah. There was never a point in time where I was going to be projecting him to play 20 seconds today. 22 seconds, if I'm being fair.
That 2 seconds made all the difference.
Yeah.
Did he score any fantasy points or did he just?
No, it was the first. The Pacers didn't even have possession. It was the first. It was the first play. It was the first play. It was the first play of the game. He was going to block a shot and landed on Wendell Carter's foot immediately as soon as the game started.
And he didn't even block the shot.
No, did they?
At least I don't have him in my single entry lineup that I hand built at like 2:00 this afternoon. It probably has all kinds of other problems.
Well, let's see. What's going on?
Dennis Smith Jr., what do you think of a 21.5 point projection for CJ McCollum tonight on PrizePicks?
I thought you were saying fantasy points. I was like, that seems low. No,
real life points on
I was going to say that seems low. All right, let's see what I have for CJ McCollum. You know, it's funny with Damian Lillard out. I would have thought that I'd end up rostering a whole bunch of CJ McCollum recently. Just hasn't been the case for whatever reason. Actually, I have him underneath that number also, which is a little surprising to me. But I mean, Anthony Simon's taken up so much usage. And to an extent that he's kind of taken a lot of the Dame usage. It's not been a big bump for McCollum, even with Lillard being out. So I don't know. I feel super strong about it, but I do have a slight lean on the under there. What do our numbers say?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was looking at his other stuff on the fantasy side there. Let's see, McCollum. We have him at a 21.5 line. We have him going over just 47% of the time. So slightly favoring the under, not a super strong lean either way. But it's one where if I, gun to my head type situation, I would take the under. Looking at that, comes up 58% of the time on the under. So that's the way I would go. But yeah, one of the more surprising situations, I think, just in terms of production overall, he's a little bit less usage than last year, just across the entire season. 26.5 usage last year, 25.8 this year. But he's slipped, and you mentioned no Lillard for a big chunk of time now. He's slipped from a 1.11 fantasy point per minute guy last year to a 1.0 this year. That's just a dramatic downturn in a bigger opportunity for CJ McCollum. It's the exact opposite, to your point, of what I would have expected him to do here. So yeah, disappointing situation for CJ so far.
Yeah. And once again, you would have thought the Dame injury would have a big impact, but Anthony Simons is basically going neck for neck with CJ McCollum in terms of fantasy production. So not a real big boost there. What else is looking pretty good? What props have a high percentage chance hitting the over or under?
Let's see. Let's jump back to the board over here. Oh, this has somehow got football on the all props. Okay. I didn't realize we were doing that. Let's see. We'll go to the rebounds page. What the hell? What do we think of that game started? Memphis and the Knicks. What do we think of Evan Fournier and a 3.5 rebounds prop? That's a 75% winner on the under on our betting tool.
I do not believe that he is on PrizePicks, but as long as we're just talking about Odd Shopper and some of the projections in general, let's see where I'm at with Fournier. For me, I like the under on that number too. Tough matchup for him against Memphis. The minutes for Fournier are all over the place, and we see those games, like once a week or so, where all of a sudden there's upside from Evan Fournier, but way more frequently he has the under. Oh, by the way, they're giving an injury update here, but I have it muted so we don't get like strikes on YouTube for a copyright thing. So I have no clue what they're saying. But it looks like the trainer's talking to Rick Carlisle right now, which is probably not a good sign, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't think that's a good thing, unless he's just in there saying, "Hey, we're taping off. He'll be back in 2 minutes." Man, maybe. I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know what's going on here. But anyway, last couple of games for Evan Fournier. He did play 32 and 27 minutes, but in general, the minutes have just not really been there for him. Big free agent acquisition for the Knicks. It's gone incredibly poorly. But the games before those two, 19 minutes, 21, 28, 25. It's hard to predict big minutes for Evan Fournier. Give me the under there. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty strong under, not the strongest rebounder in the world in general. So definitely looking forward to rostering him the day after the Knicks trade him in a couple of weeks. I hope. Really can't wait to get out from under that one. I think they can find a trade partner for him. His contract's not that bad, and they've got a lot of stuff on the table. So we'll see. What do you think going back to the PrizePicks board here? You have anything in mind for PrizePicks? Or you want me to shout another one out?
No, you can shout them out. You just look at the Odd Shopper board, and we'll compare it to what's up on PrizePicks.
What about in that same game on the other side, a guy who comes up a lot for DFS but wasn't really today, but maybe it's more interesting over here for a PRA. Points plus rebounds plus assists, 22.5 for Jaren Jackson Jr.
Triple J.
Yeah, that's coming up. That's coming off the PrizePicks page, 22.5.
Yeah, so I would have really liked Jaren Jackson here if Steven Adams was ruled out. Obviously, he hasn't been ruled out, but that aside, Jaren Jackson, I think it's a really efficient number. I have a slight lean towards the over. I don't know enough for me. I guess I wouldn't mind going with the over there with Jaren Jackson. One thing that's really stood out to me about him this year, remember the foul trouble woes, which to some extent I'm sure is somewhat risky. Do you know how long it's been since he fouled out of a game?
It must be a good long time since you're asking, and I'm not actually remembering any situations where I was pissed that he had fouled out. What was the last time?
December 19th.
That's not
it's
bad
been a while.
Yeah.
So for a guy who, pretty regularly, this was a concern for us. Like, how many chalk Jaren Jackson Jr. slates have there been in the past where it's like, hey, we played Jaren Jackson Jr. and then he immediately picked up 2 fouls a minute into the game, and then he ends up playing 20 minutes. Recent games from 35 minutes, 23 minutes the game before, but that was a blowout against the Washington Wizards. They ended up winning that game by 20 points. So that's not really what's the concern there. 30 minutes, 32 minutes, 35 minutes. Pretty consistently getting over 30 minutes. So Triple J, I'll take the over on that prop.
I don't mind that one. And if we're looking at his average in 27.9 minutes a game for the season, he averages a 23.3 PRA. So I think we're basically there anyway, right? Just if he goes out and has an average night, we're pretty much home on that one. How about a PRA for a guy that you mentioned you liked a lot for DFS, or maybe not a lot, but as a value play for DFS, you were getting to him with Eric Gordon, PRA of 16.5.
Let's see. Eric Gordon, 16.5. I have, that's Aaron Gordon. I have a slight lean towards the very, very slight lean towards the under. The over. I have him at about, let's see. Oh, actually, I have him for about 18.5. I like the over there.
Okay. How many points do you have him scoring? How much of that weight is from points? I would imagine most.
The majority of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that type of player. I think that's right. I think that comes down on the high side. I don't have it put together in front of me. We don't have the PRA listed on the site here, but I think that would be my lane there as well.
By the way, so even with this this just tiny lineup the Pacers are playing. The Orlando Magic have mustered 14 points with 3.5 minutes left in the first quarter. This team stinks. Relegate the Orlando Magic. I hate this team.
Mo Bamba should have 14 points by now playing against a 6'5" guy.
They are terrible. So the other thing too is like they can at 28 to 14, the Pacers are up now. And the Pacers suck too. And they're still kicking the Magic's ass with no big men on the team. There's a couple of players at the scoring stable right now for the Pacers. I can't tell if one of them is Jackson.
Oh, come on, big money.
Let's see.
No whammy.
Let's see. Who is it that's checking in? Who is it? I can't tell because they're sitting down. So if it's anybody who's remotely tall, it's Jackson.
Right. Yeah. By default, just based on it.
Yeah. If it's somebody who's like 5'4", then it's not him. It's big anticipation. All right. Let's see who's checking in. Well, Franz Wagner looks a little bit banged up now.
I feel bad for him. I don't think that one impacts me personally, DFS wise, but I feel bad for Franz having a nice little year.
But somebody saying Bamba got taken off after Jackson went off. I mean, technically, yes, he came off after Jackson went off, but they weren't correlated. Bamba didn't come out 20 seconds into the game.
Makes sense.
See who's checking in.
I don't think that. Yeah.
All right, that's Dwayne Washington is one of the guys checking in. Torrey Craig coming out.
There's
Justin Holiday coming out. Not Jackson. It's Jeremy Lamb and Dwayne Washington that checked in. I don't think we're going to see him, Terry. I'm a sad boy right now.
That doesn't sound good. And we've already basically lost a quarter anyway, it sounds like. So, yep, it's going to be a shot in the foot kind of a night unless one of these handful of lineups that didn't impact manages to shake free. We'll see what happens.
Full starting lineup for the Cleveland Cavaliers, by the way. What we said it was going to be before: Brandon Goodwin, Isaac Okoro, Chetty Osman, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. That is the starting five. It is somewhat notable that we've seen Kevin Love close some games over Evan Mobley as of late. We'll see if that holds. Kevin Love's been playing really well. Evan Mobley seems to have hit a little bit of a rookie wall. Only a few minutes left to go here. We didn't get any of this injury news, but all key stuff that we're still waiting on. Reasons you guys be following us on Twitter, and that news god is so valuable to us in the Discord chat. Nikola Jokic still questionable. De'Aaron Fox questionable. Jordan Clarkson questionable. Aaron Gordon questionable. Now let's get us some Isaiah Jackson back on the court. I'm really losing hope in that, though. Losing hope. All right, Terry, let's find one more prize pick prop that people could use to chase the Isaiah Jackson situation.
One of those big pieces of news that you just mentioned, sitting a little bit above what he averages for a PRA, all the way up at 49.5. Nikola Jokic, the big man from Denver. What do you think of that one? Let's assume that he plays, obviously.
49.5 points plus rebounds plus assists.
The hefty number.
That's almost on the number what I have for him. I
Not
feel
surprising. Go ahead.
I was going to say I have Jokic nearly projected for a triple-double today. Nearly. Just a little under on assists. Points obviously way over. Rebounds over 13. Assists around 9.5, but close to a triple-double for him I have projected.
Yeah, so you've actually got him projected at a nice little uptick in assists. He averages 7.8, but yeah, that's totally doable with everything he does and the amount that he facilitates.
It's also a game against Utah with a reasonably high total, 22.5, and then something 220.5. The other thing also is there's no Rudy Gobert for the Utah Jazz. Yeah. Easy matchup. I've been trying to figure out how to do that when another team is missing a key defensive player. I've just been giving like small stat boost to everybody. I've never figured out the right scientific way to do it, but very clearly Rudy Gobert being out should mean some sort of boost goes to Nikola Jokic. Not that Jokic needs any kind of boost. He's going to pop up ridiculously well anyway.
Absolutely. And, just looking at what we've got for minutes for him at the site, there's a little bit of an uptick over his season-long average in minutes. If you're thinking in a per 36 kind of a sense, definitely your assist projection was probably right on point for what he does in a per 36 sense. So, yeah, I think that you're dead on with what Nikola Jokic can do. I was looking at his assist percentage yesterday just compared to the rest of the point guards on the slate, and he was trailing only Chris Paul and James Harden in assist percentage at the point guard spot. He's ridiculous. I love getting to Nikola Jokic. So technically averages 47.5 in the PRA in 33 minutes, but given more to do, longer minutes projection, I like him to get over that one too.
Yeah, so that is going to do it for us, guys. We are going to all our energy is going to go towards just hoping Isaiah Jackson gets back out there on the court. I don't understand why he doesn't just take one, just amputate his foot, put a fake one on, get a prosthetic, go out and play some basketball.
Seriously,
He's on the bench right now.
Some YouTube clips of Willis Reed.
Yeah, exactly. Although Willis Reed sucked from a fantasy standpoint that game. We want him to come back and do well for fantasy. Just give us something. Give us something. And everybody's pointing out he's back on the bench. I know he's back on the bench.
Right.
Is that going to mean he comes back in the game? Who knows? Oh my God. Green checkmark. Green checkmark, who always has the official news. He says Jackson was pronounced dead. All right, play. His foot shouldn't be hurting him then, right? You're dead. Your foot doesn't hurt. Get him back out there. Let's see what happens. All right, guys, that is going to do it for us today. Thank you very much for sticking around to the end. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's get Isaiah Jackson back in there. If not, then I guess Terry's just going to have a really big game, Terry Taylor. But good luck today, guys. Have a good night, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.